Number 10. Man-Thing. Man-Thing was created by Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Jerry Conway, and Greg Moreau in the 1970s. He is a swamp-like creature that really just wants to be left alone in peace. His real name is Dr. Theodore Salas, who has been working on a project with other doctors to try and basically recreate the super soldier serum. He breaks protocol by bringing the woman he loves into the lab with him to see his work, but it turns out that she betrays him for the group AIM. Poor guy. But after this betrayal, Theodore leaves the facilities, injects himself with the serum that he had been working on, and ends up crashing into the swamp where he gets transformed into Man-Thing. His mind is basically gone, with only small glimpses of it appearing throughout the comics. He's been part of groups like Legion of Monsters and Stakes, Howling Commandos. Number 9. Morbius. Morbius the Living Vampire was created in the 1970s and is actually having an upcoming live-action film starring Jared Leto. But right now it seems more like Sony is trying to connect to the MCU rather than the MCU actually connecting with them. Yeah, it's a little confusing, but we'll move on. Anyways, Morbius was created by Roy Thomas and Jill Kane. Before he was known as Morbius the Living Vampire, he was a doctor named Michael Morbius, who has a rare blood condition that affected his entire body, making him very, very weak. He wanted to find a cure, and using this knowledge began experimenting on potential treatments that could help him and defeat this disease. Unfortunately, he did not get the outcome he desired. He began testing using bats and electroshock therapy to try to cure this disease. The treatment worked, but the side effects of this test truly left a mark on Morbius. This started Morbius' transformation into what he appears like today, looking like a vampire combined with a bat. Number 8. Cloak. Usually when referring to Cloak, it would be Cloak and Dagger, but in this case we are focusing solely on Cloak. Now, Cloak can access the Dark Force dimension, which gives him access to absorb the life forces of others. He can also use the Dark Force dimension to create a field of darkness around him, and anyone affected by this energy could see dark, crazy visions and also feel very numb and scared. If Cloak has anyone in this dimension while he is draining their life force and doesn't allow them to exit this realm, they will die. Now, they did have a Cloak and Dagger TV series on Freeform, but it was ultimately cancelled and not connected or tied into the MCU in any way. Number 7. Black Bolt. Black Bolt made his first appearance in the 1960s and was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. He is a member of a group called the Inhumans. Black Bolt's strongest ability is his voice, which is so powerful that he can destroy anything in its way. Now, we were very close to getting an Inhumans movie in the MCU, which was supposed to come out before Avengers Endgame, but that got scrapped and instead got turned into a show for ABC. The series had received very mixed reviews and later got cancelled after one season. The series itself did not seem connected to the MCU in any way, shape, or form. Whether or not they will try to adapt the Inhuman into the MCU is yet to be seen, but, I mean, fingers are crossed. Number 6. Ghost Rider. So there have been many different Ghost Riders throughout the comics and adaptations, but the first one was, and most popular, is Johnny Blaze. Johnny is a stunt motorcycle driver who agrees to give his soul to Satan, aka Mephisto, in order to save his father from death. When Johnny Blaze turns into Ghost Rider, it is at night around evil. His flesh goes on fire and his whole body and head turns into a skeleton, fully engulfed in flames, and the motorcycle he rides is set on fire as well. He can wield fire as his weapon, and he has had adaptations in the movies and recently in the television series Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Robbie Reyes as the Ghost Rider. Now again, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has never really connected back to the MCU. We did have some characters near the beginning crossing over with the show, but we never had any characters from the show cross over into the movies, and it felt more like an isolated series, more that's kind of stood on its own apart from the MCU.
Halfway through into number 5, Red Sun Superman. The Russian hero known as Superman is an alternate version of the hero we know now, from an alternate reality in which baby Kal-El landed not in Smallville but rather in Soviet Russia, where he was raised by the government. This Superman, while still a hero to Russia, is antithetical to the United States and has defeated some American heroes such as the Green Lantern. His arch nemesis though is still Lex Luthor, who at this point is a scientist employed by the US government to create heroes like Superman. Luthor's copied version of Superman, however, proves a failure and endangers more lives. Bizarro. Luthor created many monsters to battle Superman, but they all didn't really do anything. This version is just scary because, like, it's what every American fears. Communism. And honestly, with some of the other characters on this list and what they did to the human race, on this earth, I'm surprised that Russia hasn't used Superman to just destroy everything. Like, whatever. However, this story is a good lesson about who you keep in your life and how people around you affect who you turn out to be. So, there's that, at least. And at 4, Reverse Flashpoint Superman. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse 1 Flashpoint, we see a world where Barry died when trying to get his speed back with Thomas Wayne after creating Flashpoint. This leads to Reverse Flash claiming to be the Flash and then trying to get the war with the Atlanteans and Amazons to stop by threatening them. Obviously, this doesn't work out so well, so in an effort to save himself, Reverse Flash races through time, changing the events to create the world exactly how he wants it, with Barry not being able to stop him, which involves saving not only Bruce Wayne, but Martha and Thomas Wayne as well, resulting in a world without a Batman. On the final page of the issue, we see Eobard with all the new heroes he ended up creating and convincing them to join him, as we can tell by the Reverse Flash symbols on their suits. Even Green Lanterns and Wonder Woman has one. This page also has a Superman, and honestly, sick suit, but being controlled, or I guess led by the Reverse Flash, makes this utterly horrifying to think about, especially when you can see the other members of the Flash family racing behind Reverse Flash. He finally got what he wanted. Eobard Thawne became the Flash. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultraman. A member of the crime syndicate, an evil version of the Justice League that terrorized its Earth, that being Earth 3, Ultraman is basically the opposite to Superman. His real name, well, his real human name, is Clark Luthor, and is the adopted son of Lionel Luthor from Earth 2. Ultraman is Kal-El, with 2 L's, who comes from a version of Krypton whose people are mean-spirited and selfish. Unlike other incarnations, they gain power when exposed to green kryptonite. Just before his Krypton was destroyed, Kal-El's parents, Jor-El and Lara, send him to Earth 3 to one day seek vengeance against the being that destroyed Krypton, teaching him to become the strongest being on the planet or to become nothing at all. Upon his arrival on Earth 3, the young Kal-El coerced a couple of young alcoholic substance addicts, Johnny and Martha Kent, to adopt him, only to murder them years later once he no longer needed them. He went on to found the crime syndicate and take over the world. This guy is a homicidal, violent megalomaniac with mommy and daddy issues. However, he's definitely a character I want to see on the big screen. Please. Penultimately, and at number 2, Overman. Overman is an alternate version of Superman from a different world in the multiverse, obviously, but unlike other versions of Superman, his primary language is German. This is because on this Earth, the German soldiers won World War II, to speak around the YouTube censors, eventually taking over the planet and spreading German everywhere, as in like the language. Another Overman first appeared in Grant Morrison's Animal Man number 23. He is one among several pre-crisis characters that were returned to reality by the Psycho Pirate's Medusa mask. This Overman comes from an Earth based around the grim and gritty stories of the 1980s, and the heroes of this universe were actually a part of an experiment created by the government. Overman... This has got to be one of the most ridiculous points that I saw, but Overman went mad and destructive after contracting an STD. Not even kidding. And the other inhabitants of this Earth were a black and muscular Wonder Woman, an unnamed Flash, and a punk-style Green Lantern. Psycho Pirate pointed out how ridiculous this universe is, but I mean, come on, it's still pretty terrifying. And Overgirl was ruthless on Crisis on Earth X, okay? Finally, and at number 1, Injustice. Injustice is probably one of the most popular alternate Earth stories of this generation. Thanks to the Mortal Kombat-inspired fighting game by the same name, this is an Earth where Joker managed to trick Superman into thinking that he was fighting Doomsday when he was actually killing his wife Lois Lane. That was already bad enough since we know how Superman gets in other worlds when his wife dies. However, this time she was also carrying his unborn child, which he only found out after accidentally killing her. This sent Superman into a fit of rage and caused him to kill the Joker while Batman was intimidating him, much to Batman's dismay. This one action caused Superman to go absolutely berserk and to do the one thing that Batman and everyone else feared, use his power and become the governor of the world. Through this regime, Superman killed anyone who committed a crime, resulting in Batman leading a resistance of other superheroes, not all of whom made it. While the story in the video games remains largely the same of that of the comics it generated, there are a few differences like the amount of deaths in the comics, since none of them are really playable characters, so losing them won't really affect your gameplay experience. Either way, the scariest version of Superman we've seen today, although almost tied with the one who was using guns.
Number 10, Reverend Bruce Wayne. Reverend Bruce isn't particularly scary to begin with, but the world he comes from and the fight he fights is definitely scary. This is a version of Batman who isn't just taking up the mantle to fight his parents' killers and rid Gotham of crime, but instead is attempting to fight against a whole political and societal system. In the Elseworlds story Batman Holy Terror, the course of history is changed somewhat so that America is basically still part of the Commonwealth. As such, it turns out that the seemingly random mugging and murder of Bruce's parents was not actually so random, and was actually a government hit that was later made to look like a mugging gone wrong. When Reverend Bruce finds out about this, he dons a demon costume that once belonged to his father Thomas and sets out to investigate. He also goes on to find out about government-run human experiments and an alien whom they captured, raised, and later killed with green rocks when he became too hard to control. Poor would-be Superman. Number 9. Gods and Monsters Batman. This version of Batman is not Bruce Wayne, but is instead Kirk Langstrom. In this reality, there is no Bruce Wayne to take up the mantle, and so Kirk ends up with the name himself. Not because he was inspired by a bat smashing through a window, of course, but because he is kind of actually part vampire bat. Kirk was a brilliant scientist who was working on a cure for lymphoma. He eventually figured out how to create this cure using bat saliva and nanotech to strengthen his experimental treatment. However, while it succeeded in curing his cancer, it also turned Kirk into a pseudo-vampire. While he remains a hero and typically only ingests artificially created plasma or even animals' blood, which can also help him to survive, he has also been known to feed on criminals from time to time. He's like, these criminals, nah, I gotta eat, they kinda deserve it, I'm just gonna eat them. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more scary alternate Batman lists, of which, let's be real, there's a lot of scary alternate Batman out there, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Spooky thumbs up, spooky spook. Number 8. DCEU Batman, or Batfleck if you prefer. Ben Affleck's Batman from Batman vs Superman especially is a much darker figure in comparison to the comics, and kind of in comparison to a lot of other Batmen that have been on the big screen. This is a version of the hero who has decided that he is willing to kill when he needs to. All in all, it seems to be implied that the death of Jason Todd is what reshaped Batman's morals here and caused him to readjust his code. Not only does he kill, but he also does something even worse in my opinion, branding some of the worst criminals that he fights against with a literal bat brand. These are the criminals that Batman has deemed to have done something completely unforgivable. And the thing is that people in prison in Gotham also know the significance of the bat brand, meaning that those who end up with one are basically marked for death. The idea here is that the inmates will carry out the death sentence that Batman has marked them with because they know that whatever this person did, it was one of the worst crimes, otherwise they wouldn't have this brand. So not only is there an extra layer of fear, but this also shows a complete disregard for human life. I mean, at least a disregard for human life when it comes to really terrible criminals. Batman wants these criminals to live in fear, and he doesn't care what happens to them in prison. In fact, he kinda hopes that they end up dead. Number 7. Batman the Silenced. One perfect spine-chilling dark multiverse tale that I have loved, which even comes with its own creepy lullaby, is the Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Hush. In this story we get a reimagined narrative where Batman's childhood friend, Thomas Elliot, is the one who ends up messing up Bruce's life. Tommy in his adult years allies himself with many of Gotham's villains and more usually anti-hero types after Bruce Wayne ends up in Arkham Asylum, which also was kind of part of his doing. However, Bruce isn't quite as checked out as he's been pretending to be, and he ends up escaping in order to get revenge and taking up the mantle of Batman the Silenced, an alternate version basically of Hush, and of course an alternate version of Batman. Number 6. Vampire Batman. This alternate version of Batman comes to us from the alternate Earth 43. As his moniker describes, he is a version of Bruce Wayne who transforms into a more literal version of Batman when he becomes a vampire. Batman. Get it? Cause vampire bats. Oddly enough, this is also not the only version of Batman in the multiverse that also happens to be a vampire, as you already know, because we talked about Gods and Monsters Batman as well, who's also a vampire. Despite being a vampire on Earth 43, Bruce still fights on the good side, fighting against his vampiric urges to feed on human blood. At least, Initially he fights against them. At one point Vampire Bats asks Alfred to stake him in order to prevent him from giving in to his bloodlust, after he seemingly killed the Joker by draining him of all of his blood. However, a stake through the heart doesn't actually kill Batman here, but simply leaves him in a coma. Months later, Gotham is in a pretty bad place without Batman's presence, and Alfred is forced to awaken him in hopes that Gotham will once more have a savior. Batman does go about taking out criminals, but in a very vampiric way, creating a bloodbath as his time staked and his bodily decay has resulted in the loss of his sanity. So he's there and he's killing criminals, but he's like killing criminals, and it's like a lot.
Halfway through into number 5, Black Lantern Reverse Flash. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who were raised by Necron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were before death, but their mind is warped to serve Necron's purpose. Those with the ring have various powers, including a healing factor, oral recognition, which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation, which lets them extract the hearts of individuals that they've slain and then use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.1%, and they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten, and then would turn them into Black Lanterns upon death. Basically zombies with superpowers in addition to being an evil speedster, so definitely not something that you should be trifling with. And at 4, Johnny Quick. Johnny Allen, also known as Johnny Quick, is a criminal speedster from Earth 3. Together with his girlfriend and partner in crime Atomica, he was a member of the crime syndicate. Johnny Allen was a high-profile criminal on the run with his equally criminal girlfriend when he was cornered on the roof of Central City's Star Labs. Allen was struck by a bolt of lightning which shattered the roof, and the duo fell into the lab space below. With Allen landing amid the chemicals, something in this incident granted him super speed, and went on to become a powerful supercriminal alongside his girlfriend, who also had been empowered. While his girlfriend took the name Atomica, he took on the name Johnny Quick. And he ran through the city, answering to no one, until the day the White House burned. Around the time of Darkseid's incursion into Prime Earth, the being that had destroyed Ultraman's Krypton came to Earth, and an alliance of supercriminals formed to find a way to safety. Now my question is Johnny Quick the reason Johnny Quick became a speedster? There's the whole storyline where Barry Allen runs so fast that he disintegrates, but then he also time travels and becomes the bolt of lightning that gives him his powers. So technically, did that also happen to Johnny? Getting close to the end in number 3, Godspeed. August Hart is the former detective partner of Barry Allen. August was the only witness to Barry's accident that turned him into the Flash. While going after a criminal organization called the Black Hole, August was also struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. So August became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed, and got revenge on the one who he suspected to be his brother's killer. He had given up on the justice system since his brother's killer had gone free, and with his newfound power and the ability to become judge, jury, and vibrating executioner, August realized that after he had gotten his powers that he also had the ability to steal other speedsters' speed. Though for a time he could only do it by killing them, he practiced the skill enough to be able to do it non-lethally as well. With his new godlike speed, August was able to move so fast as to create a duplicate of himself at any given time, allowing him to give the illusion that he and Godspeed were different people, which is pretty damn sick, considering the alternatives are Speed Mirage and Time Remnant, which aren't technically the same thing. Time Remnants just create evil versions of yourself, apparently. Penultimately, in at number 2, Black Flash. The actual physical representation of death for all speedsters, they just can't see this guy coming. Okay, well, they can, but you know what I mean. Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force. Making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2, number 138 from 1998, he was seen before the deaths of several speedsters, including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen. He also tried to return Wally West to the Speed Force, however was unsuccessful, taking Linda Park instead, Wally's girlfriend, which after past experiences, Wally, I feel like he probably did you a favor. But since he was unsuccessful the first time, Black Flash returned to try to claim Wally again, freezing time for everyone without a connection to the Speed Force. But thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters, including Max Mercury, Jay Garrick, Jesse Quick, and Wally, Wally was able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to have no meaning. In the CW, Black Flash was Hunter Zolomon after the season 2 finale, and was killed during season 3 when Savitar lured him out of the Speed Force and Killer Frost froze him, resulting in her first kill that actually turned out to be her ex as well. Dare I say, ice cold. But that didn't stop the Speed Force anyway, since later Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline in the comics, becoming the new Black Flash, until Professor Zoom took over the title after his corpse was raised in the Darkest Night storyline. There's a lot of things going on. Finally, in at number 1, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear his story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but Robins kept dying left, right, and center, so understandably he got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his let's call them methods, shall we? Which honestly seems realistic to me, aside from just quitting to fight crime, but that can't happen, otherwise they wouldn't have a story, right? And DC wouldn't make any money. This eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his speed, so Batman uses the various Rogues Gallery weapons to fight Barry, knocking him out, and then tying him to the front of a cosmic treadmill-powered Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force. I don't even know how that happened, logically, or why that would have worked in their world, but whatever. You do you, Bat Marty, we gotta get you back to the future. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce end up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing, while Barry's mind was trapped in Bruce's body. He then gets a visit from the Batman who laughs, who just makes him even crazier and wants to help him conquer the universe, or the multiverse even. So yeah, that's that. He's number 1.
Number 10, Dirty Bomb Wolverine. Why does this sound like some sort of sexy nickname for Wolverine? It really is not. Instead, this alternate version of Wolverine is an empty clone that was created in the current Wolverine series and used to basically burn vampires loyal to Dracula from the inside out. This all went down in a battle in the effort of freeing Omega Red from Dracula's hold over him, while also getting back at Drac, who was attempting to get his hands on Wolverine so he could use his blood to allow his own vampire army to walk around during the day, making them obviously much more powerful. Omega Red's plan to stop Dracula was to give him what he wanted, which meant making a clone of Wolverine who was gene edited to have blood that was thick with photonic cells, similar to the ones found in plankton, which produce their own luminescence. Basically, the blood of the Dirty Bomb clone Wolverine then had the opposite effect on the vamps who consumed it, meaning they would be burnt from the inside out as opposed to being able to walk in the day. Having a gene edited clone of Wolverine is a frightening prospect, and a clone who is used simply as a decoy and bomb is pretty morally scary. And then there is the added factor of how it made the vampires feel to learn of it. And I'm sure that they were properly terrified before they were all killed. Minus Dracula, of course, who got away in the end, like he always does. Although the mutants won the battle in issue number 12 of the current Wolverine series, they did not win the war. Still continues with the Vampire Nation. Number 9, Darkclaw. If you find the Batman scary, and I mean, who doesn't? He is often drawn with the intention of looking intimidating and scary enough to strike fear into the hearts of goons and villains all across Gotham. Then take a seat, because Darkclaw is definitely going to spook you a bit here. Darkclaw comes to us from the Amalgam universe, where he was created as a cross between Marvel's Wolverine and DC's Batman, blending together two of the big two's most popular and frightening heroic characters. He's got the backstory and fortune of Batman, but still boasts of the adamantium-coated skeleton and healing factor of Wolverine, meaning that Logan Wayne is not an alternate version that you would want to mess with. And all my ghouls out there, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Wolverine lists, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button and commenting down below. Also, if you click like and if you smash subscribe, you can call me Vampy. Number 8, Phoenix. One of the most terrifying versions of Wolverine in terms of what he could be capable of has to be the Wolverine from the alternate future, where Thor ends up as Allfather and Loki wipes out all of humanity, just to make his brother suffer, of course. In this dystopian future, Wolverine himself ends up being chosen to become the new host for the Phoenix Force after his own death. Phoenix Logan was obviously capable of many different insane feats due to him being imbued with, well, the Phoenix Force, even managing to save Loki from the Celestials. Pretty impressive. However, Phoenix Wolverine would prove to be not quite as scary when facing a future version of Doom, who obliterated him. But Logan, being imbued with the power of the Phoenix Force, meant that he could resurrect, and in order to ensure that Doom would be defeated this time around, he sacrificed himself to empower Allfather Thor's weapon Mjolnir in the continued battle. Also, that would be the one really powerful Mjolnir. It's like Mjolnir with the Phoenix Force. That's crazy. Number 7, Akahiro. Sure, Daken is a character all his own, but I also counted a clone that was used as a dirty bomb against vampires, so I feel like if I do that, it would be really insulting if we did not talk about Akahiro. Daken was an alternate version of Wolverine during Dark Reign, where Norman Osborn basically took over in the comics, where he forged the organization Hammer and his very own Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were made up of former and current villains repurposed and remarketed as Avengers replacements. Osborn actually tried to recruit some of the original Avengers after after they'd been disbanded, but of course they pretty much all refused. They were like, we know you're Norman Osborn, so. Daken was recruited to be Dark Wolverine on the team, and while Akihiro might not be quite as villainous in the comics currently, at the time he was still pretty much one of the baddies. Daken is a terrifying alternate because he has less of a moral code than his dad, who already isn't known for his light touch when it comes to dealing with his opponents. Daken, like his father, is also a skilled fighter and assassin who was trained since he was a child to become a killer and a weapon for Romulus to use against Logan. Oh, and if you're not familiar with him, he also has pretty much all the powers of his dad. His claws are just a little bit different. Actually, Daken also has pheromone powers, so he's not really more powerful than his dad in terms of skill, but power set, just saying. Number 6. Wolverine Noir. Jim Logan is one of the noir versions of Wolverine that we see in the Marvel Noirverse. Another shows up in the X-Men Noir series, but with a different backstory and also kind of a different name. He's a bootlegger, but the one we're focusing on here is a detective. Honestly, a lot of the noir versions of heroes are detectives. But back then in the stories, everyone was a detective, so I'm fine with it. Either way, I personally think that narrative fits Wolverine's power set just a little bit better, being a skilled tracker himself. Jim in Wolverine Noir is part of Logan and Logan, a detective agency that boasts that they're the best there is at what we do. The whole look of the series is very creepy, very noir, and it also draws a lot on the backstory of Wolverine given to us in his origin series, where we learn of how he was mistreated as a boy, his relation to Dog, and his childhood love and friend Rose. In this version of the story, Logan's father is a very religious preacher who often forces young Jim to sit and listen to his sermons while he rehearses them.
Halfway through, in at number 5, Man-Spider. Man-Spider is the mutated form of Spider-Man which appeared in both the comics and the 1990s animated series, with his original appearance actually coming from the animated series. In the 90s cartoon, Spider-Man's transformation into the Man-Spider was not caused deliberately like it was in the comics, but as a result of his body mutating further from the original spider bite that gave him his powers. After his attempts to ask Professor X and the X-Men for help developing a cure meet with failure, Spider-Man turned to his friend Dr. Mariah Crawford for aid. Unfortunately, his initial attempt to cure himself resulted in him accelerating the actual mutation process and growing 4 new arms. The accelerated mutation subsequently caused him to mutate into the Man-Spider after fighting the Punisher and a recently mutated Michael Morbius. The mutated Spider-Man retained some of his memories and his emotional responses to seeing loved ones or people who reminded him of his loved ones but could not communicate with them. Eventually, during the final episode of the storyline called Neurogenic Nightmare, Dr. Connors reprogrammed devices that Vulture was using to absorb youth from other people and caused him to give Peter back his spider powers but not the mutation, resulting in the Vulture mutating into Man-Spider, although somehow he had gotten rid of this mutation off screen later in the series. It's also worth noting that the introduction of Man-Spider in the comics, which was thanks to this animated series, is actually what introduced the biological web shooters from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man into the comics as well. And at 4, Spider Carnage. Spider Carnage is my favorite alternate version of Spider-Man. Also being introduced in the Spider-Man animated series in the 1990s like the Man-Spider from last number, this version of Peter Parker shared most of his early life with his superhero counterpart. However, the difference between these two was that Aunt May at some point died as well, being buried next to Uncle Ben. Thanks to some messing around with interdimensional portals by Jonathan Ohm, a version of a Carnage symbiote from another universe sensed this Peter's anger and latched onto him, turning him into the Spider Carnage, a version of Spider-Man with the Carnage symbiote, if you couldn't tell. A villain set on revenge and the destruction of all realities. Spider Carnage is one of the coolest iterations of Spider-Man to date in my opinion, and it's part of the reason I love the 90s cartoon so much. I watch it all the way through just so I can see Spider Carnage at the end. And while there is a version from the comics just called the Spider, which is Spider-Man with the Carnage symbiote, this version wanted to destroy literally everything, so yes please, this is certainly the scarier of the two, just saying. Sorry comic lovers, okay? Look, I like the comics too, but Spider Carnage is definitely worse than the Spider. Getting close to the end at number 3, Patient Zero Spider-Man. After the Punisher accidentally released Survivor 118, a chemical designed to help people adapt to a post-apocalyptic environment, Spider-Man was the first to show symptoms from it after he ate the rhino during a hockey game. The Fantastic Four subdued him shortly afterwards and put him in a cage for experimentation, but Ben Grimm also succumbed to the plague himself and freed Spider-Man from captivity, though the exact reason why he did that is unknown. As he escapes into the city, he briefly fought Wolverine and the Punisher, but soon the world would start to fall apart, and heroes and villains alike would become cannibals, eventually leaving the Punisher as the only hero left to fight them. A turf war erupted among the emerging tribes of cannibals, due in part to the King of Death's manipulations in an attempt to thin the herd, but Spider-Man, now referred to as Patient Zero, was the most successful, and took control of all of Manhattan for his own tribe, while the others left to stake new lands. They had to conquer other places. Especially given the recent world issues though, I think that this is certainly something that I can say a good majority of people are afraid of. Although I bet that there are some survivors on this earth that say Survivor 118, that the Survivor 118 plague is fake. Calling it. Penultimately, in at number 2, Wolf Spider. At an unknown time in this universe, Wolf Spider gained spider-like powers, but unlike most other realities Peter Parker, he became a villain, remorselessly killing this universe's Miles Morales and everyone who stood for heroism and responsibility. Because, you know, we're bad guys, it's what we do. First appearing in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon in Season 4, Episode 16, this guy isn't even the villain of just one world. After finding a shard of the Siege Perilous, he traveled through dimensions to find the rest. One of these dimensions was Blood Spider's homeworld, where he allied himself with the Lizard King. After turning almost everyone into vampires, which is weird because I mean it was called the Lizard King, well, wouldn't you want to turn them into lizards, but whatever. He and the Lizard King hatched a plan to block out the sun so that vampires could just roam free on the earth. And this sounds very Dawnguard Volkihar clan to me. Okay, Peter? Like, you gonna tell me that you need to find Oriel's bow next? And like a daughter of Cold Harbor? I don't know. Scar. Wolf Spider, though, was cold and ruthless and obsessed with gathering the shards of Siege Perilous, and seemed to have a grudge against Spider-Man and every Miles Morales. An evil Peter Parker is always a scary thing. And finally, in at number 1, Spider-Man. Peter Parker of Earth 11580 was once a promising young student, invited by Max Modal alongside his best friend Gwen Stacy to tour his Bleeding Edge company at Horizon Labs. One of the experiments the pair observed was a massive colony of spiders that Modell was bombarding with numerous radioactive particles in the name of genetic alteration. Parker, of course, fell into this colony where he seemed to be devoured, but in the process, the spiders became a singular hive mind construct that absorbed Peter's consciousness. So they started masquerading as the man they absorbed. The hive, calling themselves Spidersman, put on the Spider-Man costume and began to fight crime in cruel York. First appearing in Spider-Geddon number 3, I absolutely hate the idea of a whole human being made of spiders, because that's just f***ed up. Look, I'm arachnophobic except for the odd time where I need to impress someone, but it's absolutely horrific to think of any being made entirely of spiders, okay? I would actually rather die. Even if this is a good guy. No f***ing way am I looking at this man and saying, oh yeah, let's let him help us. No, he can go burn with the rest of the spider species, as they f***ing should. Okay? There we have it, friends, the top 10 scary alternate versions of Spider-Man. Which version of Spider-Man is the scariest to you, and which is your favorite? And it better be sweatpants onesie Spider-Man, which is me. And a 10, Deadpool. Little is known about Deadpool's life before the zombie plague arrived on Earth 2149. At some point though, he was infected and he attacked the Silver Surfer. He most likely fled the attack but also escaped the power cosmic zombies from getting himself incinerated and killed. He later was transported from Earth 2149 to Earth 616, calling himself the Merc with half a mouth, due to his lack of most of his jaw, and exhibiting a wide range of knowledge. However, he was torn apart by some blades after Kale put some tricky maneuvers, resulting in Deadpool now reduced to only a head and being contained within armor. He managed to escape from armor headquarters with the help of Simon Garth by using the base teleporters to escape to the bottom of the sea, where Deadpool's head infected all of the menfish. Garth was compelled to travel to the island nation of Tiano in the Caribbean Sea, where he told Black Talon about the zombie plague. But like, look, normal Deadpool is bloodthirsty enough, but a zombie version that gets reduced to only a head and then still keeps going, that's freaking nuts. I'm also gonna not try to hold back my swears because it's Deadpool. It's fucking Deadpool. So sorry, editor, who has to deal with this.
No, it's fine. Fine.
And at 9, Dead Man Wade. Obsessed with feeling pain, Dead Man Wade Wilson became one of Apocalypse's Pale Riders, a team formed by Apocalypse's chief assassins. His teammate Danielle Moonstar took great pleasure in inflicting pain upon him, pretty kinky. But when Apocalypse learned that Nightcrawler was seeking out Avalon, he sent Wade and the other Pale Riders to follow him and destroy the refuge. Along the way, Danielle's torture of Wade annoyed their teammate Damask to the point where she strangled Moonstar to death. Watching that woman get killed unnerved Wayne even further. However, this version of Wade is also in constant pain, and even though he is in constant pain, his healing factor keeps him alive, meaning that he will never truly be freed. That is until Nightcrawler teleports his head off of his body, resulting in Wade dying despite being able to regrow limbs to a much easier extent than his 616 version. But hey, what am I gonna do? It's comics. And it ain't Dreadpool. In the reality of Earth 12101, the X-Men brought Deadpool to Dr. Benjamin Brighton in an attempt to cure him of his insanity. Unbeknownst to the X-Men, however, Brighton had in actuality been brainwashing his patients to do his bidding as opposed to curing them. Brighton's treatment failed to brainwash Deadpool and instead destroyed his inner voices, replacing them with a single voice that knew the entire universe was just a lie and encouraged him to kill non-stop. He then killed Dr. Brighton by smashing him into a release form after stating all the form needed was Brighton's stamp of approval. And by stamp he meant his blood. He then killed everyone in the asylum and then blew up the building. In order to end it all, he began killing the rest of the heroes of the world, and he started by going after the Fantastic Four, killing Reed Richards and the Thing first, then proceeding to kill the Human Torch. But Susan Storm caught up to him and blew his head off with a force field. But while she was grieving over the death of her family, Deadpool regenerated his head and killed her. Because of course he did. This version is a maniac, and honestly, I'm here for it. And at 7, Dogpool. Dogpool was once a dog known as Wilson, who was used as an animal test subject for Mascara X, which was intended to be a mascara that continually replenished itself after only one application. Instead, Mascara X disfigured Wilson and gave him the ability to heal from any wound. The lab owners didn't realize that he had acquired this ability and tossed him in a dumpster. Wilson tore free of the trash bag and wandered around, rejected by all those who saw him, until he threw himself in front of a car. A circus truck saw it happen and stopped for him, and immediately recognized the potential in his regenerative abilities, and he became the circus's starring act. He went from being exploited by makeup companies to exploited by the circus. The death-defying hound, Deadpool. He worked in the circus until the Deadpool of Earth 616 showed up and recruited him for the Deadpool Corps. But a goddamn dog version of Deadpool? Hell yeah, that's horrifying. It's a fucking dog that enjoys killing people from what I saw. And he can't die. Like what the hell do you think? It's gonna be cute? And at 6, Galactipool. Galactipool is a member of the evil Deadpool Corps. He is seen to attack the remaining Deadpool Corps and their allies after they defeat the evil Deadpool Corps that was originally sent to kill them. But he's taken out when Lady Deadpool deliberately crashes the B. Arthur into his head. But let's be honest. Even if he did die, a combination of Galactus and Deadpool is certainly a terrifying concept. Like, if we talk about it, I feel like it's still giving this guy too much power. Like, what sounds even the slightest bit okay about this version of Deadpool? The only reason he isn't higher on this list is because we didn't really get much of an opportunity to see his powers in action. But assuming he had all the powers of Galactus, this is probably the strongest version of Deadpool there is. But this isn't the list of the strongest alternate versions of Deadpool, it's Scariest. And while this idea is scary with no real situations to back it up, we don't know if this is a truly scary version in practice.
Number 5, the Merciless. This alternate version of Bruce is one who ends up wielding the power of Ares in the memory of Wonder Woman. Oh yeah, and he's also the one who fought with Diana to the very end against Ares before he inevitably was kind of forced to kill her. Or forced in his eyes, but in our eyes we're like, Bruce, don't do that. Don't do it. This alternate version of Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, hails from the dark multiverse of Earth at -42 and is one of the Batman who laughs Dark Knights. To me, he represents Bruce's obsession with power and symbolizes what could very well happen if this was left unchecked. Bruce here loved Diana but still ended up betraying her because he knew that she would not allow him to keep the power of Ares for himself and that she would rather destroy such power. So he was like, I gotta hold on to the power because I'm doing great with it, so I guess I gotta kill ya. But also, he wasn't doing that great with it. Spoiler alert. Number 4, the Bruce. This alternate version of Batman comes to us from the reality belonging to Batman I Joker. Here Batman is a tyrant and a symbol who is worshipped as a god. This is not our own Bruce Wayne, by the way, but like a dystopian, almost cyberpunk future version of the character where the people of Gotham see him as their ruler and god. In fact, I don't even know if this guy's name is actually Bruce Wayne or is Bruce at all. I think he's just a person that's elected and like that's the role you play. Or that seized power. The people of Gotham worship him and his mission for vengeance. The whole comic is pretty horrifying to read and reveals how even the best of heroic intentions can be perverted over time. Nothing scarier than just humanity and the way that we think things through and can like take a good idea and make it into something a lot more sinister. That's the scariest thing of them all. Well, almost. There's a few more points. Number 3. Murder Machine. Murder Machine is an alternate version of Bruce Wayne who hails from the dark multiverse reality of Earth -44. Here Bruce Wayne turns to his friend and colleague Cyborg for help, building an AI to supplement Alfred after Bruce's longtime friend, butler, and father figure is tragically murdered. However, this AI is programmed to protect Bruce at all costs, which ends up leading the Alfred Protocol, as it's named here, to take over Bruce, replacing his human body with a mechanical, indestructible, and immortal one, turning Bruce into the murder machine. The Alfred Protocol, which Bruce is now fully merged with, also takes away Bruce's ability to feel fear or sadness. I think you know where this is going. It's not going to a good place. In the end, it labels everyone a threat to Bruce and helps him to kill all those who could potentially harm him, including the entire Justice League. Pretty bleak stuff. Number 2. Nemesis. Nemesis is probably one of the most brutal Batman alternates we've ever encountered. Probably also because he doesn't even hail from DC Comics himself, but instead is a creation of Mark Millar's, who hails from Icon Comics. Mark Millar doesn't hail from Icon Comics, but this character does. Mark Millar does many things. Well, we do have an elaborate backstory for Nemesis, which involves him also seeking vengeance for the death of his parents, but in a much more twisted way. Since his parents were actually the worst kind of wealthy folks and murderers themselves, it's never really even confirmed that this backstory is the true backstory of Nemesis. In fact, it's even implied in the story that Nemesis could actually be multiple people who just cause mayhem and death and destruction because, well, maybe they just enjoy it? The whole idea of the character and everything that he does is pretty messed up and is quite dark. Nemesis provides a much more villainous take on the idea of vigilantes and how motivation can mess you up, or alternatively, how you really don't even need motivation to become a messed up and brutal vigilante in the first place. Also power. Lots of things about power, because that's how it goes. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. Obviously one of the darkest and scariest alternate versions of Batman out there has to be the Batman Who Laughs. This version of Batman is actually like an amalgamation of Joker and Batman, but he is ultimately an alternate of Bruce Wayne, because he is Bruce Wayne, so a little more Bruce really than Joker in the end. He used to fight crime as Batman, but one day Joker took things too far and caused Batman to snap. And not just snap internally, but externally as well, when he actually snapped Joker's neck, killing him. Joker released a special brand of Joker venom with his last breath, which Bruce breathed in. Over time, this venom made him paranoid and homicidal, and ultimately he became the villain of the story, going so far as to kill all the members of the Bat family. Knowing they would not be able to join him, or not be willing to join him, I guess I should say, well, he killed all of them at least except one. His son Damian Wayne was offered a spot at his father's side, and he ended up taking it. Batman then became the insane Batman Who Laughs and set out to conquer and reshape the entire multiverse. Which definitely means you're pretty scary. If you are like, I'm not just gonna take over this world, I'm gonna like go beyond that, that's a lot.
Starting off our list with an honorable mention at number 10, we have the Black Panther of the Marvel Zombieverse. Now, despite hailing from the universe literally called the Marvel Zombieverse, this incarnation of T'Challa is less scary himself, but more so just horrifying what winds up happening to him. After avoiding the initial outbreak of the zombie virus that managed to take out a large chunk of the world's superhuman population, T'Challa is betrayed by Hank Pym, aka Giant Man, and forced to be preserved as a food source for the former hero so that Hank can continue to focus on his research. Losing both an arm and a leg, T'Challa was only able to escape by teaming up with the zombified head of the Wasp, aka Janet Van Dyne. Coming in at number 9, we have the Black Panther of Earth 2301, aka the Marvel Mangaverse. Now, while usually the only frightening thing about manga is the amount of chapters I have to catch up on, the weirdest part of this section of the Marvel multiverse has got to be its unique take on Black Panther's powers. Rather than science or the heart-shaped herb of Wakanda, this version of T'Challa gets his powers directly from the Egyptian god Horus, and is capable of transforming into a literal Black Panther when he needs to for combat. Weirdly enough, Horus also gifts T'Challa the ability to grow a falcon's wings as well, so he might just have to argue with Sam Wilson about that if he doesn't want to get sued. Coming in at number 8, we have the Black Panther from the Ultimate Marvel Universe. In this slightly darker take on the Marvel Universe, gaining the title of Black Panther required T'Challa to literally defeat a Wakandan panther in a combat ritual, a task he was able to accomplish, but at the cost of having his throat slashed and severely injured. To save his son, T'Challa's father sent him overseas to be healed in the Weapon X program, the same torturous experiments that resulted in the Wolverine. Thus, this Black Panther has incredible healing abilities and adamantium claws, meaning that along with the vibranium of Wakanda, this version of the hero is wielding both of the most powerful metals in the Marvel Universe. Coming in at number 7, we've got to go with Cole Tiger, the son of T'Challa from the alternate future of the MC2 universe. Named T'Chaka II after his grandfather, Cole Tiger hasn't yet become the king of Wakanda, but that doesn't stop him from fighting for his people. In a twist, T'Chaka's increased strength and speed are only available to him in his panther form, in which he literally transforms into a human panther hybrid with incredibly deadly claws and fangs. Yeah, the Black Panther suit has always been at least a little bit intimidating, but getting chewed on by a super strong Panther Man seems like a bit more of a handful. Coming in at number 6, we've got Black Panther 2099. In an alternate future, the villainous Dr. Doom has invaded and completely taken over Wakanda, and the only hope lies in the hands of the Resistance and a new man who has taken up the mantle of the Black Panther, Kashamba. Using the powers of the heart-shaped herb, Kashamba at first seems to be a worthy successor to the mantle, with all of the powers that T'Challa had during his time as king. However, the dark twist at the end of this storyline reveals that even in victory, this version of Black Panther is nothing more than a pawn for Victor Von Doom, showing a defeated man sitting on the throne of Wakanda, a very horrifying sight indeed.
Number 5, Immortal Hulk. Immortal Hulk, or Devil Hulk, as he is sometimes referred to, only comes out at night and is the most powerful type of Hulk to this very day. This Hulk doesn't come out any other time. Even if Bruce starts getting mad, or even if he dies, he just waits for night. It's very creepy. This series came out after Bruce Banner was killed during Civil War II. After Bruce Banner, who was dead for 2 years, reappears in the comics, the Hulk that he is connected to is Immortal Hulk. He has massive amounts of gamma power, can also drain gamma, and can sense if people are lying to him. Number 4, Superior Spider-Man. So, in 2013, Marvel Comics released a limited series storyline, Superior Spider-Man. In this iteration of Spider-Man, Peter Parker dies. Yeah, you heard that right. But Otto Octavius, aka Dr. Octopus, implants his mind in Peter's body so that he can become the superior Spider-Man. He's basically trying to show him, wielding Spider-Man abilities, that he himself would be a better Spider-Man and a better Peter Parker than actual Peter himself. I highly doubt that they would try to adapt the storyline in the MCU by killing off one of its biggest superheroes they have to allow just Doc Ock to become a new web slinger. Number 3, The Punisher. So The Punisher, aka Frank Castle, has had many adaptations in the past, with his most recent one being from Netflix's The Punisher series. Now, the series was cancelled, and we never got 100% confirmation that the series was connected to the MCU movies division, especially with Kevin Feige, who is a producer on the MCU films, being involved with the Disney Plus Marvel series now. So, this character is quite dark, and especially knowing and seeing his backstory and what we have seen from the adaptation so far, that would be quite the contrast for the MCU, who try to make these films as family-friendly as they can. Now yes, you could try and tone down the violence, but that kind of would probably annoy a lot of fans. Frank Castle's backstory is that his family is killed and that he's trying to get revenge and kill those responsible. Number 2, Damien Hellstrom. So Hellstorm, aka Damien Hellstrom, wow, those are very similar names, was created in the 1970s by Roy Thomas and Gary Frederick. He is also referred to as Hellstorm, but also can be called the son of Satan. Damien is the literal son of Satan, and a human. He did not want to embrace the side of his father, but rather the human side of his mother. When he was in the Hell Dimension, his powers are limitless. He can use magic and supernatural abilities to his advantage. His weapon is a trident, which helps him harness his supernatural abilities. There will be an adaptation of this character on the Hulu TV series called Hellstrom, but I highly doubt that this will actually connect to the MCU. Number 1, Sentry. So Sentry is literally probably the scariest superhero Marvel has, and that's why it would be hard to use him in the MCU. Sentry was created by Paul Jenkins, Jay Lee, and Rick fetch in 2000. He's sort of like Marvel's Superman, just like a really dark version. He also could arguably be the most powerful superhero in the Marvel Universe. Sentry, also referred to as the Void, which was an evil entity created in his mind that clashes with Sentry. The Void and Sentry are linked together. The sad thing is that even though the Sentry is a hero and saves countless people, when the Void comes out, he will just kill as many people as Sentry saves.
And at 10, Tangent. The Superman of Earth Tangent was originally a human named Harvey Dent, who gained superpowers through a freak accident. He became one of the top superheroes, however, after defeating Ultra Humanite, who on this Earth was created by a US government super soldier project. He became too powerful to be controlled and then threatened to destroy the world. Yeah. But after the death of Superman's wife, he became dark and vengeful, taking over the world. While he protected the world from crime, he was still tyrannical, not allowing any freedom of thought. And this is where the story of Tangent Superman's reign begins. I don't know why Superman is so codependent on Lois, or whoever his wife ends up being, because like, whenever he loses his wife, he ends up going berserk. Like bro, you literally just like, you lost your whole planet. I think like one death, even if it is the love of your life, isn't gonna be that much. I mean, this version didn't lose his home planet, but like, still. Other versions in this list, you get it. And at 9, Subject B-Zero. Subject B-Zero, also known as the Monster, was a creation of Lex Luthor, presumably used to combat Superman, but was taken out of stasis early to help combat Ultraman and the Crime Syndicate. Despite being the creation of Luthor, B-Zero had a gentle heart and simply wished to enjoy the beauty of life and to make his father proud. Although imbued with Kryptonian-like powers, B-Zero was easily overpowered and killed by Ultraman, much to the grief of his father, who actually grew to love him. So while not an evil version of Superman, you have to admit, if this guy was running at you, you'd be pretty damn terrified. Like bro, get some skin cream, some moisturizer. You look like a rock gnome named Deborah Mustard, come on. Next thing you know, you're gonna try to control me with one word and then make me a little robot trinket that's gonna get stolen by a goblin who only wants to eat pigeons. And look, you may not understand that reference, but if you do, we're friends now, okay? And at 8, Bizarro. The original Bizarro was created when Superman was exposed to a duplicate ray, in accordance with the science fiction concepts of Superman's stories of the there was a lot of sci-fi going on with Superman. However, Bizarro relocated to the Bizarro world, a cuboidal planet called Hatre, which is just Earth backwards, don't really know how to pronounce it, but it operated under Bizarro logic. So like, it was a crime to do anything good, and basically since Bizarro was the invert of Superman, that Earth was also populated by inverts of other DC characters. The 1986 event Crisis on Infinite Earths though rewrote DC's continuity, eliminating that Earth. Since then, 2 different Bizarro characters have appeared. One of them was a flawed clone created by Lex Luthor, and the second, the longer lasting Bizarro, was an idea of the Batman villain the Joker, brought to life by the cosmic trickster Mr. Mxyzptlk. He was first introduced in Superboy number 68 from 1958 though, and is even one of the coolest Superman versions there is, even if he's not always like actually Superman and rather like an experiment, but like whatever. And at 7, Justice Lord. For much of his life, Justice Lord's Superman background matched the Justice League counterpart, until President Lex Luthor executed the Flash. Soon after that, Superman stormed the White House, while his comrades battled the Secret Service. And as they were doing that, Superman confronted President Luthor in the Oval Office. Despite Superman's accusations of corruption and abuse of power, Luthor refused to surrender and arrogantly stated that he would find a way to get out of prison, or at least avoid being prosecuted to begin with. Superman declared that if being a hero meant that this feuding and fighting had to continue, then he was done with it, and then used his heat vision to execute the president on the spot, Shazam style. After President Luthor's assassination, the Justice Lords spent the next 2 years imposing their brand of peace on the Earth through harsh rule. Justice Lord Superman himself continued to use his heat vision to lobotomize all of Earth's criminals and supervillains. As a result, all of them became harmless, walking vegetables who obediently inhabited the world's prisons. Which, I mean, like, is a little tamer than some versions of Superman. Like, lobotomy or death. Honestly, I don't know which would be considered more evil. And at 6, Kingdom Come Superman. Yet another world where Lois Lane dies. Except this time it's directly at the hands of the Joker, who had flooded the Daily Planet with his toxin, killing everyone but Lois, who had managed to locate a gas mask. When trying to attack the Joker, however, Joker just turns around and cracks her right in the skull. Superman returns as Lois succumbs to her injuries and dies. And as for the Joker, he arrives for his trial, but he's killed by a new superhero going by Magog. However, Magog ends up getting acquitted of his charges after killing the Joker, which honestly I understand, but Superman is appalled by the public embracing a killer as a hero. Already disheartened at the death of Lois, Kal-El abandons his life as Superman and retreats to his Fortress of Solitude, where he spends the next decade. Superman eventually returns and reforms the Justice League though, with the goal of capturing heroes who took Magog's example and started killing, which results in many a battle and a nuke targeted towards metahuman genes, a la Invasion, the CW crossover. But in the end, Superman does end up dating Wonder Woman and they end up expecting a child. I mean, like, it took you a while, but you got over it. Attaboy.
Number 5. Old Man Logan. Definitely one of the scariest alternate versions of Wolverine out there when it comes to the reality in which he resides. Old Man Logan hails from the alternate reality of Earth 807128. In this reality, it was Wolverine himself who was responsible for the death of the X-Men, as he was tricked by Mysterio into slaughtering all of them when the villains took over and ended up finally winning the day. Flash forward to the future where Wolverine is old and he doesn't go by that codename anymore because, well, it brings back pretty painful memories, which he still is haunted by to this day. Instead, he's simply known as Logan. But even though he tries to stay away from heroics, retiring, and even settling down with a wife and kids, he can't seem to escape his vigilante ways. After his family are killed when he is late to pay forced protection money to the Hulk gang, Logan himself seeks revenge, inevitably and gruesomely freeing pretty much everyone from the villainous nature of deranged Pappy Banner and his inbred family. That Hulk gang. Oh boy. Number 4. Cancerverse Wolverine. We don't know that much about Cancerverse Wolverine, who hails from the Earth of 10011, but we do know, like many others who hail from this reality, Wolverine here is horrifying to behold, and he is part of the X-Men, spelt E-X-Men. In the Cancerverse, death was completely eradicated, which you might think would bring about a sort of paradise in the cosmos, but instead this change had, well, the opposite effect, mutating everything into one big horror show. Turns out death wasn't quite as bad as we all thought, and that life, left unchecked, is actually horrifying. Who would have guessed? Number 3. X-24. In the film Logan, X-24 was an even more deadly clone than X-23. This was a clone version of Wolverine genetically engineered to be as powerful as Wolverine in his prime, perhaps even more so, and who was much more easy to control and manipulate. Not as free thinking and just more of a straight up berserker. So basically like Wolverine without any of his moral code at all, or any inhibitions. This made X-24 the perfect weapon to be used against Wolverine himself and escapee Laura, aka X-23. It took a lot to take down X-24, and his perceived strength and ruthlessness in the film made him a terrifying nemesis to watch. I don't know about you, but I got so anxious every time he showed up on screen in that initial watch through of Logan. Even when I rewatch it now, I'm like, Logan, no, X-24's coming for you, run! Number 2. Lord of the Vampires. This alternate version of Wolverine comes to us from the What If series Volume 2, issue 24. Here the fate of the world was forever changed when, during the X-Men's battle with Dracula, Storm ultimately decided to remain with Dracula. This changed the course of history forever, as Wolverine and the other heroes were captured and transformed into vampires themselves. However, Wolverine's willpower proved much too strong for Dracula to tame or control, and so he was challenged and later defeated by Wolverine, who then became the new Lord of the Vampires. What's scarier than a Terminator-style clone version of Wolverine? How about a vampire version of Wolverine who rules over all of the other vampires and can turn anyone into his loyal thrall? Number 1. Zombieverse Wolverine. Actually, I feel a little bad that I put the zombies above the vampires in this list, but here we are. I don't know how, but I almost actually forgot to mention Zombieverse Wolverine on this list. I guess maybe it's just because I'm so fixated on vampires, which I guess makes sense. But it's really shocking considering how emotionally scarring and overall how terrifying I find the Zombieverse in Marvel to be. It's just a real horror show over there. Over on Earth Z or Earth 2149, Wolverine isn't just any old zombie either, but becomes one of the zombie cosmic or zombie galacti, after he and a group of chosen few fight over and successfully devour Galactus's remains. For a long time, this granted zombie Wolverine the power cosmic, so not only was he now a terrifying member of the undead with Wolverine's killer instincts and fighting prowess, but then he also had the power cosmic on top of that. Wow.
In a 10 Reverse Flash. Now I know what you're thinking, but isn't Eobard known as the villain Reverse Flash? But he's a villain, he's not Barry. Okay, look, alright, I get it. In the main continuity, yes, but in the dark multiverse Flashpoint story, Eobard actually becomes the Flash, and he kind of became his own form of hero in a way, like a dark, twisted, messed up hero hellbent on eradicating the human race and just subjugating all superheroes to his will, but hey, that's still kind of a hero, right? Technically it counts. And I mean, like, he's still scary and another version of the Flash, so yes, it does. This is a universe where Barry Allen dies while trying to get his powers back with Flashpoint Batman, aka Thomas Wayne. But he dies, and the Reverse Flash kind of takes his place. But once he tries to stop the war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman by threatening them and killing Arthur, you know that there's going to be some hell to pay. So he sets out on shaping the world into his own image. This involves preventing Batman from ever becoming Batman and instead creating his own superhero team full of versions of the characters we know and love, but all with Reverse Flash logos somewhere on their suits usually. And I have to say, preventing Batman from being created is probably the smartest thing that Eobard has ever done, or could have done in this situation, because either way, no matter who becomes Batman, Batman is always going to lead some form of resistance. So by eliminating Batman being created, you stopped just a resistance rising against you, so good on you. And at 9, Gorilla Grodd Flash. Grodd Friended Me is the 13th episode of the 6th season of The Flash, and is the 127th episode overall. In this episode, Grodd comes to Barry as a projection of Joe, and tells Barry that he is aware of his progressions made post-crisis. He asks Barry to assist him with getting to the Gorilla City that is now on Earth Prime, so he can at least be happy among his own kind, because currently he was locked up at Argus. Barry realizes that they have to try something new and overlook the past, and they need to work together to beat the Salivar that is in Grodd's mind. Barry and Grodd combine their brains briefly, giving Grodd super speed powers. Barry tells Team Flash what's going on, and Frost discovers that on the off chance that they don't end up separating their brains the exact moment that they escape, they're both going to die. While in the Mindscape though, Barry educates Grodd on how to utilize his speed against Salivar, and he succeeds with Barry's help. Barry awakens in reality, successfully disconnected from Grodd's mind. So yeah, a telepathic psychic gorilla with super speed after combining with the fastest man alive, yeah, that's gonna be a no for me, dog. Actually though, it was a pretty sick episode. And at 8, Speed Demon. Speed Demon, first introduced in Speed Demon #1, is, aside from what your ex-girlfriends might have called you, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Blaze Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon, and yes, there are multiple. The demon component Etrigan was actually formerly Jay Garrick before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his mission to collect the souls of the most pure and the most corrupt, which just sounds like a dream job to me, but whatever. Blaze Allen refused, so in an attempt to persuade him at his wedding, Night Spectre stole his wife's soul. He stole Iris's soul, yep. Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back or at least ensure her safety, but of course, he pulls back. That's not gonna happen, bro. Speed Demon speaks only in rhymes, but is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe hellfire. Wally West, an amalgam of Danny Ketch and obviously Wally West, was the next Speed Demon who accepted the power in order to help his uncle get Iris back. It's interesting because, like, I would give up my soul for super speed. Are you kidding me? And the ability to breathe fire? Speaking in rhymes is great. Yeah, that's right. You better not hate. And at 7, Mercury Flash. Mercury Flash is a robotic version of the Flash made by Doc Tornado as a member of his Metal League. The robot uses a mercury-based physiology, whatever that means, that can make it somehow able to channel the Speed Force, and like the actual Speed Force, not even a fake one. I don't understand how this man not only learned about the Speed Force, but was also able to replicate or siphon it off using mercury, but whatever. It's comics, okay? You don't really need an explanation as long as it helps the plot. First being introduced in the Multiversity Guidebook #1 in March of 2015, this version of the Flash can do everything the normal Flash can do powers wise, but because, you know, he's a robot, can't really do human activities, but he also has the added advantage of being a robot, so he doesn't really fear death. Not only is it in his code to not fear death, but he can also just be repaired. This version of the Flash hails from Earth 44, and I kinda really want to be him. No responsibilities, only running super fast and drinking motor oil. That's the dream. And at 6, Savitar. As a fan of the Arrowverse, I had to include this one, okay? He's one of the most interesting speedsters on the show. Savitar, while sharing a name with another evil speedster from the comics, is actually revealed to be a time remnant of Barry Allen, being more of a future Flash than actual Savitar. He's a combination of the two. His story is pretty messed up, in essence making himself to have a classic chicken and the egg scenario, as Cisco would put it, where he caused himself to be created. In the post-Flashpoint Arrowverse timeline, Savitar comes back from the future to kill Iris West before her and Barry get married. This causes Barry to create as many time remnants as possible in order to stop him, but Savitar kills them all except for one. The one that he spares ends up getting shunned by the rest of Team Flash for not being the real Barry Allen, even though he still technically is the real Barry. It's weird. So in an act of fury, the time remnant runs back in time, creating a new identity for himself as the first speedster and the god of speed called Savitar. And then he comes back. He burns his face at some point, and then he tries to kill what would have been his wife, and he like remembers everything. He's in love with her, but he still tries to kill her. Yeah, I don't get it, but it's still pretty damn scary.
Coming in at number 5, we've got to go with the Black Panther from Earth X. Another alternate version of the character that's a bit more cat-like than the normally human T'Challa. This version is actually permanently stuck as a panther-human hybrid. Rather than just being in attack form, he can change into and out of at will like the Kolp tiger could. After the Terrigen mists began to spread on Earth, many animals within Wakanda also began to grow more human in appearance, leaving the Black Panther as the leader of not only the Wakandan people, but an army of Animen that grew frustrated at their current situation. Definitely one of the weirder takes on a very iconic character. Coming in at number 4, we have the horrifying creature known as the Spider Virus Panther. During the event called Spider Island, a villain known fittingly enough as the Spider Queen used Peter Parker's DNA to create a virus that would initially just give people additional powers similar to Spider-Man, but would eventually mutate them into horrific half-arachnid, half-human beings. With multiple limbs, eyes, and a thirst for blood, this version of T'Challa with all of the powers of both the Black Panther and Spider-Man in a single terrifying form, this creature prowled the halls of the Museum of Natural History and definitely would be more frightening than anything else you'd find in that building. Coming in at number 3, we've got to go with the mashup hero of Ghost Panther. During the Infinity Warps event, which led to multiple Marvel heroes being combined together in a new universe with half as many inhabitants, Black Panther and Ghost Rider were combined together to become, you guessed it, the Ghost Panther. Adding Hellfire manipulation to Black Panther's power set would be reason enough to be scared of this version of the hero, but combined with a flaming skull head and eternally riding a fiery panther steed, and this is one Black Panther you don't want to mess with. Coming in at number 2, we have Azuri, the grandfather of the Black Panther. During the era of World War II, Wakanda was still isolated from the rest of the world and protected by Azuri, a Black Panther with the ability to raise and control the dead like a necromancer. Combined with his talent with the machete-style weapons that left him unafraid to decapitate his foes to send a message, and this version of Black Panther was an intimidating obstacle whenever Captain America briefly showed up on Wakanda's doorstep. And honestly, it's a good thing that Cap was able to keep his head. And coming in with our final slot, we've got to go with the venom-wielding Black Panther of an alternate reality, Ngozi. In a world where the original Black Panther falls in battle against the Rhino while protecting Nigeria, a track student Ngozi bonds with a symbiote in order to protect her friends. Impressing the Wakandan warriors nearby, Ngozi is taken back to their homeland and eventually earns the title of the new Black Panther, but with her own violent symbiote twist. With all the powers of both the heart-shaped herb and the venom symbiote, Ngozi is definitely a foe to fear.
And at 10, Superior Spider-Man. Superior Spider-Man is actually Otto Octavius, who prior to the Superior Spider-Man storyline had brain swapped with Peter. Yet a piece of Peter still remained in his own body and didn't die in Otto's body, which ended up convincing Otto to be a hero, albeit a darker one. This small bit of Peter that was left in his body was also trying to regain control, for obvious reasons, because a superhero was piloted skeleting his bone mech. This small bit of Peter though was at times able to interfere or even control Otto temporarily. One of these moments came in Superior Spider-Man number 8, where there was a device that was capable of wiping Peter from Otto's brain, but to get the actual item, Otto had to perform surgery on a little girl. However, Peter didn't think that Otto was actually able to do it, so he tries to stop Otto from even performing the surgery, but he also didn't want him to get the thing that would wipe him from his brain. Also, Otto did this surgery while having his Spider-Man mask on and an additional face mask. But either way, this version of Spider-Man was definitely more ruthless and willing to kill, since he was still technically a supervillain. And at 9, Kane. The clone that would come to be known as Kane was the Jackal's first attempt at cloning Peter Parker. Initially thought to be a success, Kane eventually became deformed due to a flaw in the cloning process, and he continued to degenerate, and he was left further deformed and mentally unstable. Aren't we all? The Jackal allowed Kane to live as like a test subject to see how long he would be able to survive, and it ended up exceeding Jackal's expectations. As a result though, Kane experienced a strong feeling of rejection that might be kind of like a father-son kind of thing, you know what I mean. Kane left and realized that the degeneration that had caused his mental state to decline had also amplified his powers that he had genetically kind of inherited from Peter. His strength, speed, stamina, and agility were also comparable to those of Peter, but he also gained precognitive powers as well, which showed him flashes of the future, which seemed to be sort of an amplified spider sense. He also possessed a mark of Cain, which was a corrosive touch that he used to leave eaten away handprints on victims' faces, which is pretty damn scary if you ask me. Also, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more, be sure you hit that like button and subscribe because it really helps us out against the algorithm almighty. Also, I'm dressed as Spider-Man and talking about Spider-Man, so I feel like that's worth a like. And at 8, Pestilence Spider-Man. When Apocalypse started his plans for world domination, he captured 4 people who he saw as being good enough to be his horsemen and corrupted them. Spider-Man became the horseman known as Pestilence. Pestilence was one of the horsemen that Deadpool, Cannonball, and Siren encountered in their alternate reality search for Cable. And even though Pestilence was accompanied in the fight by Famine and Archangel, all 3 of them were defeated. This version of Peter Parker has the same powers as his 616 counterpart, except this time they've been augmented by Apocalypse when he corrupted them. But I mean, like a Spider-Man who is literally a horseman of the apocalypse and asks people if they will scream while he sucks the marrow from their bones, I think it's safe to say that this guy's pretty damn scary. And he made his first appearance in 2005, which makes this character around the same age that Peter was when he got his powers, which is kind of ironic. He hails from Earth 5701, which is the age of Apocalypse Earth. And at 7, Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider comes from Earth 11638, and in this reality, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben never died, and actually ended up helping Peter to train as a hero with his new spider powers, becoming the Amazing Spider, a famous and popular superhero who also became a rich and successful scientist, having his own company called Parker Technologies. With his resources and motivation from Uncle Ben, the Amazing Spider used transportation technology to bring Spider-Men from other universes to his and absorb their powers to increase his. After bringing the Spider-Man from Earth 616 to his Earth though, and making him believe that he arrived in this universe by accident, the Amazing Spider was weakened by the feedback of the dimensional portal. Eventually, the Amazing Spider was convinced that what he was doing was not in fact heroic and allowed himself to die. But after dying, the Sorcerer Supreme of Dr. Banner, infused Peter's spirit that was trapped in hell with the powers of the damned, causing him to become a form of Ghost Rider, calling himself the Ghost Spider. And honestly, this is one of the baddest spider suits of all time. I love it. If I could figure out a way to cosplay this, I would. And at 6, Zombie Spider-Man. Okay, so technically this is Spider-Man, but it's a zombie version of Spider-Man, but I'm gonna count it anyway, because this is pretty damn messed up, zombie or not. On Earth 2149, an alien plague ends up infecting all superpowered individuals and turns them into zombies. However, it's later revealed that the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead was actually what caused this plague. But after learning that the plague was really bad, since I guess the fact that they were calling it a plague wasn't enough, or the fact that the world had to shut down, so the population wasn't wiped out, Peter ran home to get Aunt May and Mary Jane the hell out of Dodge. But when he got there, we got a good old case of Parker luck, protagonist syndrome. Boom, zombie spider. He ends up becoming a zombie as soon as he gets home and eats the 2 most important women in his life. He also fractured his jaw before becoming a zombie so he could open his mouth more, I guess. Or kinda like man spider it. Yeah, it's not a pretty sight. Like, even by zombie standards, it's ew. Halfway through, in at number 5, Wolverine pool. Wade Wilson from Earth TRN-1946 was bonded with adamantium to his skeleton by Weapons Plus, their version of the Weapon X program. He was later recruited by Deadpool for his army. He killed Deadpool Pulp before the arrival of Galactipool. He was attacked by Deadpool with a grenade from which bugs came out of and then ate all of his flesh, leaving behind only a skeleton and claws, which is horrifying. His powers are seemingly the same as Earth 616 Wolverine, but like with Deadpool's body. So I mean, okay, it's weird because he looks like Deadpool, but he is also Wolverine. It's fucking weird, okay? Wolverine Pool's healing factor though is most likely weaker than the 616 version of either Wolverine or Deadpool's healing factor, which makes him less dangerous, but come on. A combination of Wolverine and Deadpool is something that we should all fear, and most likely do fear. I'm surprised Deadpool didn't make this a thing at the end of Deadpool 2 though, when he was correcting everything that he did wrong, including the Green Lantern movie, which was actually Ryan Reynolds, but hey. And at 4, Evil Deadpool. The origins of the being known as Evil Deadpool are actually tied to Ella Whitby, a British psychiatrist obsessed with this superhuman mercenary Deadpool. She collected numerous parts of Deadpool's body that he had lost over the years and kept them in her freezer. When Deadpool found them though, he threw them in a dumpster in disgust, which is weird because I mean, you're Deadpool, why are you disgusted? It's your own body, but whatever. The parts eventually thawed out, and since it still had Deadpool's healing factor, they all decided to fuse together into a single person. Evil Deadpool hijacked the private plane of an American businessman and traveled to the United States around the same time the original Deadpool did. And the two crossed paths for the first time after the Evil Deadpool blew up Deadpool's favorite chimichanga joint, and they fought until they ran out of bullets. Both Deadpools agreed for a second round at Canarsie Park though. Their second explosive encounter caught the attention of Captain America, who arrived to the scene after Evil Deadpool had escaped. But yeah, he's the whole reason for like the whole Deadpool core, so pretty fucking scary dude. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Death Mask. After a revolutionary procedure performed by Reed Richards removed a lethal brain tumor, Wade Wilson became a super genius and used his newfound intellect to erect a criminal empire. Wade began wearing armor styled after Dr. Doom and went by Death Mask. After killing Deathwish, which was Victor Von Doom, who was the Deadpool of this reality that the Deadpool of the mainstream continuity was actually quite fond of, Death Mask decided to take down his alter ego. After being defeated, Death Mask made a contract with Mephisto to unleash monsters to Earth, including the demon Infernal Hulk. Not to mention that he has the powers of Deadpool and Dr. Doom, with an even cooler color scheme than the original Dr. Doom. But ultimately, in at number 2, Venom Pool. Venom Pool is an alternate reality version of Deadpool from Earth 90211. He is the combination of Deadpool and the Venom symbiote. Being a part of Earth 90211, he is part of the reality Beyonder loves partying in. A reality that's perpetually stuck in the 1980s in many regards, much like my father. Venom Pool is the Beyonder's go-to party animal, until the party gets boring for the Beyonder. But Deadpool was actually originally meant to kill Beyonder before discovering how much he liked the partying lifestyle. And once Spider-Man showed up demanding that the Beyonder remove the symbiote, this is when Deadpool becomes Venom Pool. He's later seen in one of the evil Deadpool core, and he is presumably killed shortly after this point, but we still don't know. His appearance changed rather drastically in the time between What If Venom possessed Deadpool number 1 and Deadpool kills Deadpool number 2. In his initial appearance, Venom Pool looked like he was a cross between Venom, Deadpool, and Rick James, and in his recent appearances he looks like Deadpool but with like a Venom mouth and more ripped. And finally, in at number 1, Poison Deadpool. The Poisons are a species of crystalline extraterrestrials spawned by the Poison Queen, originating on Earth 17952. The Poisons spent an unknown amount of time as prey for larger, stronger creatures before discovering that they could assimilate symbiotes and their hosts to become more powerful. While hunting the Venom symbiote, they were discovered by an incarnation of Doctor Strange, who bonded to the symbiote and proceeded to recruit an army of venomized superheroes, anti-heroes, and supervillains from across the multiverse to stop the Poisons. However, the Poisons saw this as an opportunity to swell their ranks, and most of these recruits were either killed or assimilated. When Venom Pool was summoned to the Earth dealing with these Poisons, he ended up willingly surrendering himself to a group of Poisons, thinking that the host's original personas were not completely extinguished, and banking on his insanity, granting him additional resistance to this process. This theory was proven correct though, as though his body was consumed to create Poison Deadpool, his mind remained intact, and he was able to suppress that of the poison that had consumed him. So while Deadpool was uncertain how long he could suppress the Poison's psyche, he helped the Resistance infiltrate the Poison's lair, which I mean has gotta be one of the most Deadpool things that you could fucking do. Like, I'm super overpowered with the symbiote, so I'm going to willingly give myself over to these things that could potentially take over my mind, but I don't fucking care, because I'm gonna be even more powerful, and then, if I am crazy enough to just not have to deal with it, then I'm just gonna help the good guys, because I don't fucking care. Jesus. Deadpool, man.
Number 10, the Fury. Generally depicted as an enemy of Captain Britain and the X-Men, the Fury is a deadly android built by the reality-manipulating psychic Mad Jim Jaspers of the parallel timeline of Earth 238 to destroy all superhumans but himself. Since it's not a living being, it doesn't possess any superpowers. However, it's ridiculously strong, can generate lethal energy blasts, is capable of adapting to any situation, and can regenerate its mechanical body at will. Most of the Fury's enemies on Earth 238 were based on British comic book characters from the 1950s to the 1970s. After succeeding in its mission, the Fury was deactivated until Captain Britain and his elf sidekick Jackdaw were sent to Earth 238 by the Captain's mythic mentor Merlin. The status crew and forces working for the country's oppressive regime reactivate the Fury and send it to kill the hero, and it murdered Jackdaw and then killed Captain Britain. After a little bit, it traveled to Earth 616 and continued killing many of Captain Britain's allies until it was eventually taken down and buried in the cave system of Captain Britain's mansion, where it absorbed the circuitry of the computer and repaired itself. There's a bit more to its story, but hey, I don't want to spoil it all for you guys, so give it a read for yourself, starting with 1982's Marvel Superheroes UK, number 387. Number 9, Sugar Man. One of the most terrifying looking villains on our list today is Sugar Man, the villain with a terrifyingly powerful tongue, size and mass alteration abilities, and highly advanced regeneration ability. Originally, he ran the human work camps in the Pacific Northwest and was a geneticist with a lab around Niagara Falls, where he regularly tormented his captives. Magneto needed a mutant with chrono variant powers, aka time traveling powers, in order to go back in time to restore reality's proper order before Charles Xavier's death, and Ileana Rasputin was revealed to be one of the few around, so Colossus and Generation Next were sent to retrieve her. Sugar Man held up pretty well against them, only almost dying like 3 times. He eventually hitched a ride to the Apocalypse Citadel and was transported from his native Earth of 295 to Earth 616, where he operated with Genosha to help the magistrates create a mutant captive army that could take over the world. So not only is he scary looking, he is also scary smart. Can't imagine them sticking him into any X-Men movie, let alone an MCU movie anytime soon, so in the meantime check him out in comic form, starting with his first appearance in 1995's Generation Next, number 2. Number 8, Supergiant. Although the other members of the Black Order made an appearance in the MCU, one member was unfortunately shafted, and that is none other than Supergiant, the mentally unstable omnipath and telepathic parasite who seeks out intellect and devours it. In the comics, Supergiant had absolutely no issues with taking out the Jean Grey School and the X-Men associated with it. Later on, when the Black Order seized Wakanda, Supergiant was left in control of Black Bolt, whom she would mentally order to activate the bombs the Illuminati hid in Wakanda's necropolis. Upon activating the bomb, Supergiant was faced by Maximus, who had the trigger, and Maximus triggered the bomb, but also used Lockjaw to transport Supergiant along with the bomb to a distant uninhabited planet, where she perished in the explosion of the bomb, although she did later return as a mental projection and even attempted to take over the body of Captain Glory, so she could continue wreaking havoc on the world. Thankfully though, she was eventually taken out for good by the Lethal Legion while trying to take over Thor's mind. Check her out for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2013's Infinity, number 1. Number 7, Kull Borson. Born the older brother of Odin, Kull Borson, aka Serpent, is the god of fear in the Asgardian world. He possesses all the conventional attributes of an Asgardian god. However, as the son of Bor, many of these attributes are significantly better than those possessed by the majority of his race. He possesses enough superhuman strength to shatter Captain America's shield with his bare hands, has the ability to manipulate magic as he's able to teletransport, revive the dead, and transform himself into a giant serpent. And as the god of fear, he could consume the fear of other people to empower himself, making him stronger and even younger in the process. During the Fear Itself storyline, Kull created and gathered his Worthy in order to spread chaos across the entire world. This group being made up of Juggernaut as Kurth, Breaker of Stone, Hulk as Null, Breaker of Worlds, Atuma as Nurkod, Breaker of Oceans, Titania as Skirn, Breaker of Men, Grey Gargoyle as Mok, Breaker of Faith, Absorbing Man as Greythoth, Breaker of Wills, and Thing as Angrier, Breaker of Souls. Thor was eventually able to kill him in the storyline after some intense battles, but not without losing his own life in the process. Obviously though, both characters do come back to life just a little bit later on. However, Kull meets his permanent end in 2019's Thor Volume 5 number 13. Want to know what led up to that point? Well, check out this whole story for yourself, starting with 2011's Fear Itself, number 1. Number 6. Cassandra Nova. This powerful telepath is certainly not well known among general audiences and has actually never been introduced in any of the movies whatsoever. Cassandra Nova is essentially a member of a parasitic race of psychic beings and attaches herself to Charles Xavier while he's still in the womb. She absorbed the darkest parts of his mind and basically became Charles's twin sister. Though the doctors pronounced her stillborn, Cassandra in fact survived and spent the next few decades as a growing mass of cells in a sewer wall, building a new body for herself and planning her revenge on her brother. Since she copied the DNA of Charles, this means that she is able to access the full spectrum of his powers, making her one of, if not the strongest telepath, because this means she has all the powers of Charles Xavier, meaning the ones that he has had and the ones that he might receive in the future as a result of any latent mutations. Overall, she is a dangerous enemy of the X-Men, having made an army of Sentinels murder over 16 million mutants on the island of Genosha, and that by itself is a reason she is on this list today. Check her out for yourself in 2001's new X-Men number 144, and let me know your thoughts on her in the comments below. Number 5. Vox. Maximus Boltagon, aka Vox, is an inhuman and son to two of the top geneticists at Datillon. Subjected to the DNA-altering Terrigen mist when he was an infant, Maximus peculiarly showed no outward sign of any mutagenic change. Although as he matured, he hid his developing psionic powers from the community, but was less successful in disguising his antisocial tendencies. His mental powers granted by the mutagenic effects of the Terrigen mist give him the ability to numb, override, and even get rid of a person's mind. He has the ability to induce short-term amnesia in others and the ability to exchange his consciousness with another person as well. He does seem to have a limited range though, but it is made up through variability, as he's only able to affect minds in a certain radius and only create one effect at a time. His influence generally functions while Maximus concentrates, but he has been known to leave long buried influences in his subjects as well, which he can trigger by voice command, causing a subject to carry out embedded commands, forget something, or even remember something. In the recent Death of the Inhuman storyline, Maximus is at New Arctillon when the Kree begin their campaign to get the Inhumans to join them or die. The superhuman Vox and the Kree with him are on New Arctillon and begin murdering every Inhuman they come across, old or new. Armed with all the Inhumans' abilities and no humanity whatsoever, Vox easily cuts his prey down with his powers or with his literal energy scythe. Even Maximus cannot defeat Vox as he quickly loses an arm for even making the attempt to try and do so. It was later revealed that the Kree took his body and placed it in a Vox costume where he was brainwashed to serve the Kree. When Beta Ray Bill took down Vox during his confrontation with Black Bolt, it broke the brainwashing on Maximus as something on Vox's costume teleported her way while also killing Maximus in the process. Number 4. Mad Jim Jaspers. Mentioned briefly at the beginning of our list when I was talking about the Fury, Mad Jim Jaspers is not a super well-known villain, but just because they're not well-known doesn't mean that they're not scary. He has a truly terrifying power, which is the ability to shift and twist reality however he sees fit, making him without a doubt one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, having powers beyond the cosmic entities. Couple that with the fact that he's, well, mad, and you get something out of a David Lynch nightmare that you do not want to mess with. Jaspers regularly twists the world into the nightmare hellscape he believes reality to be, and this, as you can imagine, leads to some imaginative and horrifying scenarios. According to Merlin, the 616 Jaspers is just way too powerful, stating this version of Jaspers is too powerful, too dangerous. His 238 counterpart could at least be halted even if it meant destroying his entire continuum. This one, however, is not so easily containable, and if he can't be defeated, then the Omniverse shall fall into chaos and a new hostile god shall play dice with the matter. Now, if you want to know more about the character, then check him out in his first appearance in 1983's Daredevil, number 9. Number 3. Mr. Sinister. Nathaniel Essex is the supervillain commonly associated with the X-Men, known as Mr. Sinister. He is an incredibly ruthless and sadistic man who has no problems doing whatever he deems necessary to get what he wants, including, you know, mass murder. Thanks to having his genetics altered by Apocalypse, he was transformed from a regular old human into a superhuman, capable of some ridiculous things like shapeshifting, telepathy, telekinesis, concussive blasts, and can't forget that he also has super strength, speed, stamina, durability, and reflexes. Sinister is also a scientific genius with expertise in the field of biology, genetics, cloning, physics, and engineering. The character is a master manipulator and planner with decades of genetic research at his command. He goes to great lengths to preserve his powers and personality through elaborate technological means, such as conditioning certain children to be his quote-unquote host in the event of his future death. Over the course of his time in comics, we have seen him go up against the likes of so many heroes and come out relatively unscathed, and that is why he is so high up on our list today. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1987's Uncanny X-Men number 221. Number 2. Chaos King. Amatsu Mikabashi is none other than the Chaos King, the god of evil, chaos, and the stars to the followers of the Shinto religion in Japan. He possessed the conventional abilities of one of the kami, the order of Japanese deities, such as superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, endurance, and recuperative abilities, as well as high ability to wield some form of potent Japanese magic, a brand of sorcery that seems especially effective against the Olympian deities. His physical strength, at least in his main incarnation, is considerably less to that of like Zeus or Izanagi, and is roughly equal to that of an average kami, but Mikabashi can project energy on a scale at least rivaling that of Zeus and Izanagi as well. Like the Asgardians, the Japanese gods are extremely long-lived, but not truly immortal like the Olympians, as they tend to age at an extremely low rate upon reaching adulthood, and are 3 times denser than normal human beings. During the events of the Chaos War, we catch a glimpse of Chaos King teamed up with Necra and none other than the Grim Reaper and Abomination to fight against the other gods. He even goes as far as unleashing Carrion Crow, Eater of the Dead, to antagonize the revived X-Men members. All in all, he is brutal in terms of methods and isn't too easy on the eyes either, so check him out for yourself, starting with 2006's Thor Blood Oath number 6. And number 1, the first firmament. At the very beginning of it all, there was only one universe, the first firmament. For a long time, the first firmament was the sole being in creation until its loneliness became unbearable and it decided to create the first life in creation to give itself companions as well as servants, which it eventually came to regret. It created 2 specific types. Black servants dutifully obeyed and worshipped their creator, and then the multicolored ones had completely different values and desires, as they wanted a dynamic, diverse, and continually evolving reality, where beings lived, learned, reproduced, aged, and died in order to slowly improve themselves through evolution. Unfortunately for them, when the creations argued with their creator, they were destroyed completely. Now, one can only imagine what might happen if an entire universe were to turn evil, but this is the answer to that question, since the first firmament became the evil that many people worry about. Just imagine an evil sentient galaxy that could destroy pretty much anything with just a gesture. Absolutely terrifying and way too much for the MCU. Check it out for yourself in its first full appearance in 2017's Ultimates 2, Volume 2, Number 5.
Number 10. Man-Bat. The Man-Bat is not always a villain of Batman's. He has been known to sometimes be an ally as well. But when Dr. Kirk Langstrom is in his Man-Bat form, he is always horrifying. So horrifying that the closest thing we got to him was in one of Batman's nightmares from Batman v Superman in the DCEU. However, this wasn't really specified to be Man-Bat specifically. Dr. Langstrom aimed to create a serum to help the deaf and blind, but accidentally made a serum that also transformed anyone who used it into a giant bat-like creature. Both he and his wife suffer from its effects at one point, becoming the Man-Bat and She-Bat respectively. It would be cool to see a horror-style Batman film featuring these 2 monstrous and sometimes villainous characters. Number 9. Solomon Grundy. While he's appeared in lots of animated films, Solomon Grundy has yet to make his debut in the live-action world of the DCEU. This could be because of his monstrous appearance. Solomon Grundy is a zombie-like villain who sometimes ends up as a hero depending on the circumstances. He has a Frankenstein-type vibe to him as well, which likely makes him too monster-like for the likes of the DCEU. Although there are so many horror-inspired characters and villains in DC Comics that would be cool to see if that genre made its way more into the films. Horror DC, I would watch those movies. Number 8. Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange has a place in the television series Gotham, where he is played by B.D. Wong, and is depicted as the chief of psychiatry at Arkham Asylum. But we have yet to see the insane mad scientist make an appearance in the DC Extended Universe. Because he is often closely tied these days to Arkham Asylum both in the comics and in the Batman video games, it would be kind of hard to introduce this madman who has a tendency to experiment on patients and transform them into monsters into the DCEU without first introducing the famed Asylum. Hugo is a formidable and frightening Batman foe, not just because of how insane he is, but because of how brilliant he is too.
It's a perfect plan. With this machine, I can imagine Batman to be anyone I choose. And these fools will pay a fortune for it.
He was even able to use his smarts and deductive reasoning to uncover Batman's true identity. Number 7. Mr. Mixie Pizyelik. So, Mr. Mixie might not be horrifying to look at. He's kinda silly looking, truth be told, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be scared of him. He has more power than you can possibly imagine, and in fact, anything that he can imagine can come to pass, should he will it. The only limit to his reality-altering powers are the limitations of his own imagination. Like Batman's Joker, he has at times times claimed to be the ultimate Superman foe. In one story to prove this, he even killed all of Superman's enemies and allies just to prove how evil he was. Mr. Mixie also forced Superman to kill him as well, forcing Superman to break his own moral code. Ooh. Talk about being on Joker's terrifying level of ultimate villainy.
Oh, I don't feel so good. But it's still worth it.
Number 6. James Gordon Jr. He might not be on Mr. Mixie's level in terms of his power set, but James Gordon Jr. is one terrifying and creepy villain. As his name implies, he is related to Commissioner Gordon and is in fact his son. Surprisingly, James is not like his dad and grows up instead to become a psychotic serial killer, exhibiting early warning signs from a young age that there is something very wrong with him. He used to pick apart and torture animals and was suspected as being involved in the disappearance of one of Barbara's friends, Bess Keller, though nothing was ever proven. He ends up returning to Gotham and is revealed to be a full-out serial killer who enjoys torturing his victims to death in Black Mirror. Later on, he ends up joining the Suicide Squad and becomes the team's strategy analyzer. Man, I would not want to work with James Gordon Jr. on the Suicide Squad. I'd be like, ugh. No thanks. Number 5. Papa Midnight. Papa Midnight is a villain to John Constantine for the most part. Sometimes he's an ally, but more often he's not, as the man is obsessed with power and is a pretty bad dude. Papa Midnight grew up in Trenchtown, Jamaica. Born Linton Midnight, from a young age he became inspired by tales of dark magic that his parents had told him. He betrayed a group of slaves, conning them into believing that they would be protected if they rebelled, which led to their deaths, and later went on to sell his sister's soul into demon slavery, so that he could achieve more power for himself through using her soul as a barter chip, selling it to the demons of hell. Ooh. Considering how violent and insidious Papa Midnight is, we likely won't be seeing him in the DCEU, although he has managed to make an appearance in the CW Arrowverse, which is pretty impressive. Number 4. Crib. How does one even make a villain like Crib in the DCEU, just from a visual standpoint? Like, ooh, that'd be a lot of effects, I think. Crib is a member of the Sinestro Corps. She is described as being an alien hag and is 100% something out of a nightmare. Lots of Baba Yaga vibes here as well. However, instead of being associated with eating children, as Baba Yaga sometimes is, Crib's purpose is to kidnap the newly born children of Green Lanterns who are also parents. Crib will even go to the lengths of giving her pregnant victims 4 cesareans in order to secure their children. Ugh. She keeps the kidnapped newborns in her hunchback, which looks like a creepy bone crib, and promptly kills the parents of any children whom she has taken away. What's more disturbing is it's never explained why Crib has this compulsion. It's just something she feels inspired to do. I guess she doesn't think Green Lanterns make for great parents? She's like, I'll be a way better parent to these babies with my weird bone crib. Super qualified. Number 3. Dollmaker. Dollmaker has a horrific origin, which makes it hard to introduce him without going full horror film mode. When Barton Mathis was young, he would go camping with his father, who it turns out was a serial killer. While camping, Barton would not only witness his father kill people, but also commit acts of cannibalism. He also saw his father killed when apprehended by the police. Years later, Mathis would grow up to be a gifted but deranged surgeon who was obsessed with using his victims' body parts to craft dolls. He wears a mask made of human skin and was the one who helped Joker to remove his face during the lead up to the death of the family storyline. Number 2. A Black Lantern Corps. One of the most terrifying villain groups, both appearance-wise and in terms of their threat level, is the Black Lantern Corps. Of course, this would be a hard supervillain group to introduce, being that we'd likely need Green Lanterns to be on the scene to help explain, well, just who the Black Lantern Corps are and why we should care about them. After all, you can't defeat the Black Lantern Corps anyways without the entire emotional spectrum of lanterns assembled to help create that White Lantern power. This threat might also just be too huge and horrific to make an appearance due to the sheer size of their numbers. In the Blackest Night storyline, they were like an overwhelmingly sized zombie apocalypse level of threat, killing heroes and resurrecting them to join their deadly ranks. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. It might be a little too confusing for the DCEU to introduce the Batman Who Laughs, as that would mean they'd likely have to involve the Dark Multiverse somewhere in their films, and the Dark Multiverse is likely too dark even for DC to make that happen on the big screen. The Batman Who Laughs is an alternate version of Batman who was infected by Joker venom after being pushed too far by the villain, causing him to lash out and kill the Joker, snapping his neck. This caused Batman to become infected, driving him insane, and causing him to take down his own world's Justice League and kill his own Bat family, save for Damian Wayne, who he convinced to join him. He's one of the biggest bads in DC's current storylines.
Number 10. vermin. Edward Whelan from Earth 616 had a pretty average childhood aside from his abusive father, which is actually what led him to the streets and crime. Now, it's not exactly known when, but at some point he got the attention of Baron Zemo and was subjected to many tests that gave him various rat-like traits and abilities. Aside from the obvious rat-like appearance, his strength, stamina, speed, and durability were boosted to superhuman levels, and he also gained the ability to communicate with and command rats that are up to 2 miles away. After gaining these powers, he was sent out to end Captain America. However, he ended up being overpowered by Cap and taken back to S.H.I.E.L.D. for interrogation. He managed to escape fairly quickly though, and since then he has been a pretty big thorn in both Captain America and Spider-Man's sides. However, they have actually used him to their advantage sometimes, as Spidey once used him as bait for Kraven the Hunter. Whelan, since his introduction, has been a part of the Hood's gang and the New Revengers, so he has definitely been in his fair share of crazy fights and done some terrible things, like the time he almost straight up murdered Spider-Man and would have succeeded if he wasn't interrupted. The reason I think he's too scary for the MCU to bring in is because he not only looks utterly terrifying, but thanks to his genetic alterations, his mental capabilities are at subhuman levels, meaning he pretty much works on primal instincts alone. I mean, sure, he's still able to talk, but his reasoning skills are not the best, so he's pretty ruthless. And let's not forget that he also likes to eat people. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1982's Captain America number 270, and let me know if you agree with me. Number 9. One Above All. Residing in the lowest depths of the underworld known as the Below Place, the One Below All is the dark counterpart of the One Above All. It is the source of the mutagenic third form of gamma energy, which allows it to use gamma mutates to manifest itself whenever it feels it's necessary. The One Below All is actually what gave the Hulk his powers in the first place, as the gamma bomb test partially opened the green door that Below was kept behind. Fast forward through some really cool events that you should definitely check out for yourself, and we see the One Below All possess the bodies of Brian Banner as the Devil Hulk, Walter Longkowski as Sasquatch, and the Absorbing Man, which led to the final battle of the Immortal Hulk arc. Revealing its true form, a giant green cloud of crazy gamma energy, the One Below All torments the Hulk so much that Bruce Banner and the Hulk actually separate. However, Absorbing Man was able to reroute the gamma energy the demon was using it back into the Hulk's body, and with one powerful thunderclap, the One Below All was stopped, at least this time anyways. One Below All is too terrifying for the MCU in my opinion, because he's literally a god, and the reason behind all the gamma radiation and the gamma power being such as the Hulk and Abomination, you know, etc. I mean, who knows? Honestly, if they want to send Mark Ruffalo off with a great story, they could finally give him his own movie trilogy and have this demon as his final battle. I highly doubt it though, so in the meantime, check out the One Below All in his first appearance in 2018's Immortal Hulk number 5. Number 8. Nightmare. This supervillain is basically the Freddy Krueger of the Marvel Universe, and if just knowing that isn't scary enough for you, then buckle up. Classified as a Class 3 demon able to capture a sleeping person's astral form, Nightmare's whole thing is he's able to bring their form into his realm to torture them, and the effects of that can last for hours even after they wake up. Nightmare has been a major pain for many heroes in the Marvel Universe, including Peter Parker and the Hulk, and none more so than Doctor Strange. That poor guy seems to get the biggest and baddest baddies out there, but I guess that's the price you pay when you're the most powerful sorcerer. Strange has made it clear that he makes a regular habit of casting a protection spell before he goes to sleep, so he does not have to go toe-to-toe with this villain. Later in this character's run, we see Nightmare growing stronger by the minute, able to access human minds through the American dream alone, and he caused these people to go on a violent rampage until he was finally stopped by Captain America and S.H.I.E.L.D. Skip ahead a little bit more and we actually see the death of this character up against Loki, in which the trickster god used one of Iron Man's automated cars to just straight up flatten Nightmare. So hey, at least we know he can be killed, right? What makes him so scary to me, and definitely too scary for the MCU, is he's literally the boogeyman. He's capable of wreaking havoc at any given time. His ability to terrorize the mind and attract his victims is in a never-ending horror makes him uniquely scary, and I doubt lovable Disney would ever want to cause nightmares in their viewers. Now there is a new Doctor Strange coming out in 2022 though, so maybe we'll get to see this villain, or maybe we'll get a mention of them. For now, check him out in his first appearance in 1963's Strange Tales number 10. Number 7. Shumagorath. Older than time itself, Shumagorath is essentially Marvel's take on a Lovecraftian eldritch horror. It is an unknown cosmic entity that used to run Earth before we pesky humans came along, so as you can imagine, Shuma takes offense at this and often comes back to reclaim his old stomping ground. Doctor Strange is more often than not the only one who can actually fight this thing without completely losing his mind in the process, but as cosmic beings are known to do, it can never really be truly killed. It is considered to be the primal power of chaos and the greatest of the old ones, and aside from immeasurable strength, Shumagorath is also capable of creating powerful blasts of mystical energy that can literally wipe out planets. Although its presence is usually unexpected and unwelcome, Doctor Strange did have to summon a small part of it once during Thanos' invasion of Manhattan to wreak havoc on the city and draw attention away from themselves. Outside of our own reality, Shumagorath has invaded many other Earths such as Earth 9411 and 9997. However, it is very rare that they come out on top because there is usually a Doctor Strange or a group of heroes there to put a stop to them. This terrifying villain is a bit too scary for the MCU in my opinion because, well, I mean, just take a look at it. It is literally a massive eyeball and tentacles, just like a real Cthulhu vibe going on, and I'm not really a huge fan. We might end up seeing him in Multiverse of Madness, or even in whatever the third movie will be for Doctor Strange. A Lovecraftian Elder God would certainly be a badass final boss for Doctor Strange. Check out Shumagorath for yourself in 1973's Marvel premiere number 10, and let me know in the comments if you think an on-screen version could be on its way. Number 6. Demon Bear. I mean, from the name alone you can probably guess why this one is scary, but just stay with me, okay? Created by a villain with a cursed knife, Demon Bear is a corrupted Apache bear spirit. He haunts the dreams of Danielle Moonstar of the New Mutants because he was actually made from her parents. In her nightmares, he tells her he killed her parents and that she's next, so in a way he's actually linked to her psionic abilities to create illusions, except his illusion is more of a demon. Like a regular old bear, Demon Bear has the vicious tendencies you would expect from a wild animal, however, there is a lot more than meets the eye. Drawing his powers from negative human emotions, Demon Bear can also teleport, transform, and corrupt human souls. He has gone up against other Marvel characters aside from the New Mutants, including Ghost Rider and Warpath. However, it was actually Psylocke who ultimately drove out the demon and saved the spirit bear within. He actually hangs out by her side as a companion now, so I guess he did get to redeem himself in some way. I think this character is way too scary for the MCU because he is literally an all-powerful bear that is capable of tormenting people. And not to mention he feeds off the negative emotions, so he only grows stronger the more the person doubts their abilities around him. That's just too much for one character, and I really can't see Marvel bringing him in anytime soon, so why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1983's New Mutants to tide yourself over until we finally get to see him in all his furry glory. Number 5. Gorr the God Butcher. Born on a planet with no name, Gorr was taught from the very beginning to always trust the gods. However, they never seemed to answer his prayers. Stricken with grief after the loss of his parents, wife, and son, Gorr completely gave up hope and renounced his faith from the gods. However, while wandering the desert, he actually encountered the god Null while he was engaged in battle with another god. With confirmation that the gods are real, Gorr was needless to say pretty mad. And when the one god asked for help, Gorr actually used a piece of Null's symbiote and created the all-black Necro Sword to kill it. From then on, he vowed to take vengeance on all the gods for ignoring his prayers, and thus began his journey as Gorr the God Butcher. Wandering around the universe, Gorr absorbs the power of every god he comes in contact with, torturing and killing along his warpath. That is until he finally meets the mighty Thor. The God Butcher storyline ranges across eons of time as Gorr absorbs the ability to time travel, and ends in an epic conclusion against 3 periods of Thor's life. Young Thor, Avengers era Thor, and obviously Old King Thor. Now I doubt Gorr will ever grace the screen in the MCU because he is just way too powerful. Equipped with the Necro Sword he carries around, he has the capability to literally slay anything that comes his way. If he was introduced much earlier on, he would have been a much bigger threat than Thanos. Also, you know, just a man who's lost his faith and has nothing to lose is definitely not someone you want to mess with. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2013's Thor, God of Thunder, number 2. Number 4. Annihilus. Known as the Living Death that walks or the Lord of the Negative Zone, Annihilus is an insect-like creature with some truly insane power. He was exposed to an object called the Cosmic Control Rod, which extended his lifespan and gave him his powers. These powers include continuous rebirth, superhuman levels of strength, speed, durability, and stamina, and flight of course. Obsessed with protecting the rod, he did absolutely everything he could to keep it from everyone else until the Fantastic Four took it away from him. Annihilus has at various times been the ruler of the Negative Zone, controlling its inhabitants via his powerful Cosmic Control Rod. He first encountered the Fantastic Four after Reed Richards discovered how to travel to the Negative Zone from Earth. Over the years, he clashed with the Fantastic Four on many occasions, often with the group foiling his plan to invade Earth. He would later lead an enormous fleet of spaceships from the Negative Zone into the main universe, setting off the Annihilation Wave by destroying a ton of planets. The Armada was opposed by a number of cosmic heroes such as Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and the Silver Surfer, and was thankfully stopped by the cosmic entity Galactus, with Nova killing Annihilus in the process. He was later reborn as an infant in the aftermath of the Annihilation storyline. But other than that, we have seen Annihilus go up against the likes of many other heroes, and he has been a worthy adversary to say the least. Now I doubt we'll see this character in the MCU anytime soon just due to their immense power and ability to literally broadcast intense fear into the others, the likes of which has even been able to shake the Hulk. It's It's possible that we'll see them later on once more powerful characters such as Nova and Adam Warlock are introduced, but they are too big a threat. Give their story a read for yourself, starting with 1968's Fantastic Four Annual number 6. Number 3. The Maker. Now, unlike his Earth 616 counterpart, Reed Richards is about 20 years younger, born into a completely normal family, and God, what was it? Oh yeah, he's insane. Now, I'll try not to spoil too much of the story for you because I really think it deserves a read, but I will do my best to give you just the basics. Following an explosion that left Richards presumably dead, the Fantastic Four mourned his loss, but in reality, he's actually alive and well, and he actually set off the explosion himself and was responsible for a ton of other attacks around the city. Convinced that he knows how the world should be run from now on, he is willing to do whatever he thinks is right, regardless of the consequences. Thankfully, he is stopped by a group of heroes and he is flung into the negative zone. But it didn't take him too long to get back though, and he easily took over most of Europe. Fast forward a little bit and we see him form the Dark Ultimates, but they were quickly defeated by the power of the Infinity Stones. Teaming up with Cabal of Earth 616, Richards was able to manipulate the Ultimates into prematurely attacking the Earth, and do I got you interested in the character? Good. I'll leave the rest of the story for you to read for yourself. What makes the Maker so terrifying is that he is so intelligent that there is really no way of defeating him, and since he has the ability to literally stretch his brain to make himself even smarter, he is always 10 steps ahead of you no matter what you do and what you think. Of course, we don't even have the regular Mr. Fantastic in the MCU yet, so even if they have been considering integrating this character's introduction is definitely far off. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 2004's Ultimate Fantastic Four number 1, or feel free to just skip ahead to when he is the Maker by taking a look at 2011's Ultimate Comics Ultimates number 1. Number 2. The Skinless Man. If you were ever wondering why they called Wolverine Weapon X, well, here's your answer. It's not an X, it's actually the Roman numeral for 10. Now with that in mind, meet weapon number 3, the Skinless Man. Harry Pyre used to be a barrister during the Cold War, and he was actually very good at his job thanks to his mutant power, elastic and multi-sensory skin. Designated weapon 3 by the Weapons Plus program that augmented his strength and powers, Pyre went on to do some pretty terrible things, and all of that finally caught up to him when Phantom X shot him, stole his skin, and left him for dead. Now with no skin, Pyre took revenge on Phantom X by cutting off his face, and was later recruited into the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants while he was on the run from that. Once again though, everything seems to catch up to him because in 2013's Uncanny X-Force number 34, he meets an untimely end and he's not really been seen since. I could go into all the other horrific stuff this guy has done in the comics appearances, but do I really need to? It should be plainly obvious that there will never be an MCU version of the Skinless Man out there. He has no skin, and his whole thing is literally putting you in a similar predicament as him. That just seems to me like you've got a formula for a character that will forever be stuck in the pages of a comic book. I also understand that he is prominent in the X-Men universe, which is not necessarily the MCU, but it's fine. I'm definitely not far off when I say that there is no way they would use this character even if they had the rights to him. Check out his story for yourself in his first full appearance in 2012's Uncanny X-Force number 21. And finally, number 1, we have Arcade. Nobody really knows who or what Arcade was before his life of crime. He has given so many different accounts over the years with no evidence to prove any of them. The one that seems the most true is that he killed his father when he was 21 in order to acquire massive amounts of money, and he discovered that he really liked killing, so he became an assassin. However, he soon got really bored with that and decided to use his wealth to construct a death-themed amusement park to kill people. As a skilled killer, Arcade has been tasked with killing many heroes over the years such as Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, and many X-Men as well. But all of his attempts have ended in failure. On his 29th birthday, he learned that he was a huge laughingstock in the villain community, and this made him realize that what he'd been doing is no longer a game, and that winning from this point on is everything. Using his genius-level intellect and his vast fortune, he constructed a new Murderland and trapped 16 teen heroes in it for a month, toying with them and prodding them. However, they were eventually freed, and Arcade was last seen tied to the front of the SHIELD helicarrier as a form of torture for everything that he had done. What makes him terrifying to me is that he's all about mind games and toying with people, which basically makes him the Marvel equivalent of Saw. He knows exactly what to do and say to get people to gang up against each other, and he has the knowledge and resources to execute any plan. That is way too much power for one villain to have, especially a movie villain, so I feel like we won't get to see this character on the big screen anytime soon. Maybe one day though, who knows.
Number 10. Court of Owls. The Court of Owls is a villainous and powerful group who seek to exert and wield political influence in order to shape the world as they choose. They are enemies of Batman and often use their group of highly skilled assassins known as Talons to eliminate those who stand in their way. These assassins are also immortal to an extent, as they are often imbued with a metallic alloy known as Electrum, which has astounding healing properties and can even reanimate and resurrect dead tissue. The Court of Owls was created by Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder Snyder, first appearing as adversaries to Bruce Wayne in the 2011 Batman series in issue number 2. Number 9. Granny Goodness. Her name might not make her sound terrifying, but Granny Goodness is not as sweet as her name makes her out to be. She became a trainer of Darkseid's soldiers after impressing him when she herself was selected to train and become one of his elite hounds. Fans of Kingsman may find the story of how she was trained very familiar. During her training regimen, she was given a dog to train herself, who stayed with her and progressed alongside her. After bonding with the animal, whom she named Mercy, she was later instructed to kill it. Goodness refused and instead killed her trainer. When Darkseid asked her why she had done this, she revealed that Mercy was worth more than her trainer had been to Darkseid, as Goodness had trained the dog to not only be loyal to her, but to Darkseid above her. Darkseid tested the theory by ordering Mercy to kill Goodness and was impressed when he found the dog actually obeyed. Goodness of course was forced to kill Mercy, but this act would inspire Darkseid to shape and use Granny Goodness as his most reliable trainer and recruiter of soldiers, with Goodness being responsible for brainwashing those she trained and becoming the most loyal and fearless members of Darkseid's army. Number 8. Black Flash. In the comics, Black Flash acts as a symbol of death, and also sometimes as literal death for the speedsters. You see, the former Flashes and past speedsters have all been too fast for regular death to touch them, and so it seems instead they have their own version. Enter the Black Flash. The Black Flash draws power from the Speed Force like many of the other speedsters we've seen. This being is able to freeze time, but only for those who do not possess potent super speed powers. It resembles death in appearance, looking like a corpse of a zombified version of the Flash. While Black Flash has appeared in the Arrowverse, this Speed Force entity has yet to appear in the DCEU. Number 7. Mandrak the Dark Monitor. Mandrak is a pretty confusing entity, but also a fairly scary one. Mandrak was once, or is, depending on what you believe, Dax Novu. And Dax Novu was once part of the Monitor. Following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, the injuries the Monitor had suffered caused it to splinter somewhat, dividing its body and creating other, smaller monitors. Dax Novu was one of these monitors. He eventually realized that the monitors were parasitic beings who were feeding on the energies of the multiverse, slowly consuming and destroying it. He informed the other monitors of this, but was shunned for attempting to share his realization. Dax then became corrupted, turning into a dark monitor known as Mandrak. While we might eventually see the Monitor and Anti-Monitor make their way into the DCEU films, it's unlikely we'll see this dark monitor pop up anytime soon. Number 6. Anti-Monitor. Speaking of monitors, we should also quickly touch on another scary and powerful one, sort of the scary and powerful one, the Anti-Monitor. Anti-Monitor is a supremely powerful villain who threatened the very existence of the multiverse during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. He controlled the antimatter universe, and is hell-bent on ensuring the destruction of all things. So much so that even after Anti-Monitor is defeated, Necron ended up trapping the Anti-Monitor's body, and as it was later revealed in Blackest Night, using it as a source of power for the Black Central Power Battery. While we might get a sort of Crisis-inspired storyline in the DCEU with all different alternate universes and timelines from DC in television and film being acknowledged, it's more likely that they'll go the Flashpoint route as opposed to the Crisis on Infinite Earths route. Number 5. Dr. Death. The most recent incarnation of Dr. Death from Prime Earth was only around for 5 issues, so it's not just his horrific story and appearance that will likely bar him from appearing in the DCEU. It's also just that he isn't really one of the main villains. He doesn't have as much clout. However, in the few issues we did see him in, he proved to be a terrifying villain and foe. Dr. Carl Helfern was a brilliant scientist working for Wayne Enterprises on a serum that would strengthen bones, causing them to become more durable instead of breaking when under stress. However, his failed attempts combined with other mental trauma and strain caused him to go insane. He killed his scientific team, injecting them with a failed version of the serum that caused their bones to grow until they were ripped apart. Number 4. The Corinthian. The Corinthian isn't specifically from DC directly itself, but is from an imprint of theirs that used to be known as Vertigo. Well, it's still known as Vertigo, but it no longer exists. It was discontinued, and instead we got Black Label, which is also an amazing line, but everyone was obviously still sad to see Vertigo go. One of Vertigo's most famous series was Sandman, which also featured some of DC's characters who made cameos throughout. The Corinthian, however, was not one of these, but is a character unique to the world of Sandman. While we are getting a Netflix series for Sandman in 2021, I also think it would be super cool to get some darker toned DC films. Among them, it would be cool to get some Sandman, or at least a Sandman film. Although the Corinthian might be too monstrous to actually make an appearance, even if we did get a Sandman film. He is one of the nightmares that Dream made. At one point, he escapes the dreaming and ventures out in the world, where he becomes a serial killer who pulls out and eats his victims' eyes. He himself has mouths where his eyes should be, and usually wears sunglasses to disguise his monstrous appearance. Ugh, eating eyes. It allows him to see everything that you've seen, which is, gross still. No, it's still gross. Number 3. Dr. Destiny. Speaking of Sandman, I want to talk in particular about another horrific villain who appeared there, although this one also exists as a horror and supervillain within the direct DC Comics universe as well. There he wielded a device he'd invented called the Materiopticon. This device was later retconned to be Morpheus's Dreamstone, which his mother gave him, when Dr. D appeared in Sandman. Dr. Destiny was hypnotized by the Justice League to prevent him from dreaming and becoming too powerful. As a result, he was driven insane and ended up in Arkham Asylum, wasting away, becoming a skeletal version of himself. When he escaped, he wreaked havoc at an all-night 24 hours diner where he tortured the patrons and staff before Dream finally caught up with him. Thank goodness, because that issue, woo, it's crazy. Number 2. Professor Pig. Professor Pig's real name is Laszlo Valentin. He is a former Spiral agent who went insane and became obsessed with curing people of their individualism in order to perfect them. When the crime syndicate temporarily took over Earth, Gotham City was overtaken by the criminals who ruled in Batman's absence. Pig himself used the hospital as his own HQ and worked from there, kidnapping civilians, sedating them, and transforming them with strange, cosmetic, and mutilating procedures, using involuntary patients to create his own horrific Dollatron army. He was created by Grant Morrison and Andy Kubert, and also first appeared in 2011's Batman series. Number 1. Jane Doe. Jane Doe is a serial killer who served time at Arkham Asylum. She appears to not have any skin of her own, appearing to be covered in exposed muscle tissue. Instead, she covets the skin and lives of others. While she doesn't appear to have any specific superpowers, it has been implied that she might be possible of shapeshifting. She often gets to know her victims before killing them and adopting their identities, sometimes even wearing their preserved skin as a suit, instead of simply using makeup to disguise herself. For example, I could be Jane Doe right now and you wouldn't even know. That's how good she is at it. Oh my goodness.
Number 10. Styx. Starting off the list today with a pretty terrifying mutant. Jacob Acorn was once a homeless man who was approached on the street by a medical researcher to participate in an experiment involving some new pharmaceuticals, and he obviously accepted because the pay was good and there were very few risks. It was revealed that during the trial, the researcher had actually lied about what he was looking into. The trial was about exploring whether the human body could develop an immunity to cancer, so Jacob was injected with a mutated cancer compound. Alongside developing an immunity to the disease, he also became a living cancer cell with the ability to kill organic matter just by touching it. However, his mind was also tainted and he took up the name Styx after the river Styx. Jacob quickly developed an affinity for death, finding it was the only thing that could bring him happiness, and alongside Gerald Stone, the two made a deadly mercenary duo. Now, I highly doubt that Marvel will ever consider bringing this baddie into the MCU because his origins are way too dark for good old Disney, plus he is a ruthless killer who does it for nothing more than just pleasure. So, for now, check him out in comic book form in his first appearance in 1988's Amazing Spider-Man number 309. Number 9. Bullseye. Known as the Mercenary of Mystery, Lester, insert name last year, might not have any powers, but that by no means makes him any less terrifying. Lester has always been a master marksman, and before his mercenary career he tried his hand at Major League Baseball, but quickly grew bored with it because he was constantly pitching perfect games. However, he quickly found his true calling as a special operative of the United States National Security Agency. Not long after, he became a freelance merc because he found too much joy in killing his targets with his signature killing method: throwing things. Gaining a reputation in New York City, Bullseye was hired to take down Matt Murdock, but ultimately failed every time as he was stopped by, Daredevil. Later on, we see him go up against the likes of the Punisher and Spider-Man and walk away to tell the tale, which is quite the feat for someone with no powers. The worst thing this villain ever did, in my opinion at least, was kill not one, but two of Daredevil's girlfriends, Elektra and Karen Page. This led to his demise at the hands of Daredevil, of course, because I can't imagine anyone who wouldn't want revenge after that. I doubt we'll ever see Bullseye in the MCU because 1, we already have a master marksman in the form of Hawkeye, and 2, his methods of torture and his sadistic nature are utterly terrifying, and putting that on the big screen would be too much in my opinion. Check out this character for yourself and let me know what you think, starting with his first appearance in 1976's Daredevil number 131. Number 8. Blackheart. A slightly lesser known villain and utterly terrifying son of the demon Mephisto. Usually depicted as an enemy of Ghost Rider, this all-powerful demon is one of the most powerful in the Marvel Universe and possesses a vast array of magical powers including telekinesis, telepathy, the ability to travel dimensions, and of course, the ability to project energy blasts out of his hands. Under his father's tutelage, Blackheart explored and learned everything about being evil in nature and has attempted to corrupt many of our favorite heroes such as Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. Blackheart is the leader of the Spirits of Vengeance, a group that was created to oppose the Ghost Rider, and with their help he caused some serious damage in the Marvel Universe. Skip ahead a bit and we see Blackheart with some newly acquired demonic powers attempting to take over the Earth by himself. Thankfully this was stopped by the Avengers and Spider-Man, but not before he could rip out the Falcon's soul and send it to hell. I feel Blackheart is way too scary for the MCU because not only is he the son of Mephisto, a demon so powerful we've only ever heard of him in the MCU, he is the embodiment of evil itself with so many powers making him a ginormous threat. Imagine him getting introduced alongside Mephisto. I mean, any fight against the two would be over in the blink of an eye. Give Blackheart's origin a read for yourself, starting with 1989's Daredevil number 270, and let me know if you think he could ever make it on the big screen one day in the comments below. Number 7. Galactus. Another villain that has been off limits to the MCU for quite some time thanks to his ties to the Fantastic Four, which has made so many fans around the world fear they would never see him on the big screen. Galactus is the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse. Originally, Galactus was a humanoid named Galan, born in the previous incarnation of Earth 616 on the planet Ta, a paradise-like world whose civilization is said to have been the most advanced of any known universes at the time. However, the 6th Infinity and all its universes were in their final stages of collapse due to the multiversal renewal cycle, being consumed by the abstract entity known as the Black Winter. Fast forward a bit to him becoming a cosmic entity. Galactus possesses almost limitless cosmic power that gives him a vast array of powers that would take me forever to list off for you guys. It is actually ridiculous. With his insatiable hunger for energy and his heralds of Galactus by his side, the almighty being is an almost unstoppable force capable of pretty much anything. Like, seriously, he's not called the Devourer of Worlds and the God of Oblivion for nothing. Do I really need to explain why Galactus probably won't appear in the MCU? I mean, at least anytime soon. The dude eats planets, and as it stands right now, there aren't many heroes in the MCU that can help take down such a big threat. It would be super cool, and I would honestly freak if I ever saw him in a movie one day, but it is so unlikely right now just due to his sheer power and presence. Check out Galactus for yourself in his first appearance in 1966's Fantastic Four number 48. Number 6. Mojo. Just looking at this guy gives me shivers up and down my spine. Mojo is a part of an alien race from a planet known as Mojo World that resides in a pocket dimension known as the Mojoverse. He is a powerful sorcerer whose full power is unknown, and outside of his homeworld of Mojo World, Mojo possesses the ability to create an anti-life energy field that kills any natural organism. He can project concussive blasts, and he can even increase his own power through television ratings. Mojo has been seen manipulating so many characters in the Marvel Comics, including Rachel Summers, who he got to work for him for a while, but once she broke free, he took matters into his own hands and decided to create his own versions of the X-Men to serve under him, and thus the X-Babies were born. Fast forward past a ton of attempts to get his ratings up so he could increase his power, we see a desperate Mojo launch an all-out attack on New York City that separated the X-Men and sent them into intricate recreations of key periods in their lives. Now I doubt Mojo will make it to the big screen anytime soon because, well, I mean, look at him, I can only imagine how grotesque he would look, but also because of his methods. Mojo is so self-absorbed and wants nothing more than to be powerful and liked, which for him kinda go hand in hand. So he'll do anything and everything and get rid of anyone who stands in his way. Check out Mojo for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1985's Long Shot number 3, and see if you agree with why I doubt we'll ever see him in the MCU. Number 5. Dracula. A lot of you are probably looking at your screen right now like, Jack, are you sure you know what you're talking about? Dracula has played a pretty decent role in a lot of Batman stories, but this is Marvel. Well, you might be surprised to find out that Dracula has been a pretty prominent figure in the Marvel Universe for quite some time. Like most iterations, Vlad Dracula is the supreme ruler and the world's most powerful vampire. Driven by lust for power, companionship, and blood, his centuries of undead existence have brought him into a conflict with vampire hunters, other immortals, and, more recently, superpowered heroes. Born in 1430, Dracula didn't become the vampiric overlord until 1459, after he was beaten in battle by the Turkish warlord Tarak, and was taken to Egypt to be healed. However, it was revealed that he actually turned into a vampire. With newfound vampire powers such as superhuman strength, speed, and agility, a regenerative healing factor, hypnotism, and weather manipulation, Dracula wreaked havoc for centuries with few that could oppose him. Fast forward many years to modern times, and we see Dracula go up against the likes of Blade, Johnny Storm, Mephisto, Thor, and even tried twice to make Storm a vampire so she could become his bride. I can't imagine that Disney will ever give the green light for this character because a blood-sucking, all-powerful vampiric villain doesn't really fit with Disney's style. Not to mention that they don't really like to make R-rated movies, and that is the only way this character would work. Appearing for the first time all the way back in 1951, suspense number 7, why not familiarize yourself with Dracula just a bit more? Number 4, Shadow King. Had to include the Shadow King on this list because he wasn't on the last one and he is too good, or I guess bad, to leave out. He is allegedly a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness that came to be after the first ever nightmare. Operating through Amal Farouk, who acts as his human vessel, the Shadow King is stated to be a true Omega telepath, making him the most powerful telepath on Earth besides Charles Xavier, as he has been shown to overtake some of the most strong-willed characters like Black Panther and Genta without them even being aware of it. Shadow King was actually the one responsible for the Psy War, when he tricked Psylocke into causing a massive wave of energy that destructed psionic powers across the world. However, he ended up stretching himself a little bit too thin, attempting to link with all the minds on Earth, and was defeated by Psylocke in her new Shadow astral form. This wasn't actually the end for him though, as he was around well after Charles Xavier's death. He even possessed his body for a while. Shadow King has appeared over many Earths in the Marvel Universe, taking a different evil form each time, such as on Earth 6141, where he merged with Professor X, becoming Shadow X, or on Earth 1298, where he also took over Charles Xavier and became Onslaught. I can't imagine Marvel ever putting the Shadow King on the big screen because he is far too big a threat. It seems impossible to actually get rid of him without another being whose powers are on par with him, which is actually what happened in the comics when Professor X and Psylocke teamed up. Check out this multi-universal being for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1979's X-Men number 117. Number 3, The Brood. The insect-like alien race that travels through space with the goal of finding hosts to infest with their spawn. Yuck. Brood societies work similar to how an average bug colony works, with them living in clans or swarms that serve under the Empress Brood. They are a truly savage race that not only enjoy the suffering that they cause others, they also revel in the terror that their infections cause their hosts. They don't technically have any powers, but they are incredibly resistant thanks to their exoskeletons, they have tentacles that are capable of long-range attacks, and they use their razor-sharp teeth and stingers in close combat to deliver either paralyzing or fatal poison. The Brood have been seen on Earth many times throughout Marvel history, going up against the likes of Carol Danvers, Wolverine, Fang, and a large number of the X-Men as well. Sometime after their initial appearance on Earth, a mixed team of X-Men and the Fantastic Four discovered that the Brood Queen and her squadron were leading an attack on Earth, with the first of the bunch arriving in New York City, but thankfully they were stopped rather quickly thanks to a Cerebro-enhanced Emma Frost. They have been seen around since, but I'll let you discover what happened for yourself. Now, I really can't see Marvel bringing this alien race to the MCU as they are anytime soon. Maybe if they weren't partnered with Disney they would be willing, but I can't imagine their parent company would be cool with a bunch of malicious insect-like creatures getting people pregnant Predator style. Check out the Brood's first appearance for yourself in 1982's X-Men number 155. Number 2, Demogoblin. Jason McIndale Jr. had enough of losing against Spider-Man and the Green Goblins, so in their quest for the power that he craved, he ended up following a bunch of demons back to their lair to confront their Dark Lord. Impressed with his efforts and will, the Demon Lord bestowed upon him superhuman abilities through a demonic possession. However, the demon proved to be incompatible and ended up ripping away from his human host and began living separately as the Demogoblin. Determined to destroy all sinners and redeem himself, the Demogoblin went up against the likes of Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, Venom, and even Jacob McIndale Jr. because they were the only ones willing to stand in his way. After the Demogoblin's initial death from a church pillar crushing him, he was resurrected by Carnage using Shriek's body as a new vessel, and dubbed himself the Demogoblin now. Alongside her new BF Carnage, she traveled around with Manwolf to hunt down Misty Knight, and she would have killed Misty Knight if it weren't for Manwolf intervening. In a more recent storyline that takes place after Dark Carnage's death, Demogoblin started calling herself Saint D and basically started her own religion. Considering that Carnage is too scary for the MCU to bring in and that they play such a large role in the Demogoblin story, it makes sense that this character wouldn't be introduced anytime soon. Not to mention that they are totally fine with killing and do whatever they think is necessary. Take a look at this terrifying creature for yourself in their first appearance as the Hobgoblin in 1989's The Spectacular Spider-Man number 147, or feel free to skip ahead to their time as the Demogoblin in 2019's Absolute Carnage Lethal Protectors number 1. Number 1, Null the Symbiote God. Once an ancient malevolent deity whose existence predates the universe itself, and was originally content to just drift through the endless abyss that existed before time itself. When the Celestials started creating the universe, Null was awakened by the light of creation and was pretty pissed because his kingdom of darkness was pretty much ruined. After killing one of the Celestials, he was cast back into the void once again, and then he created a symbiotic suit of armor out of the darkness he commanded and started his journey across the universe with the goal of getting rid of the other gods for good. The only weakness that Null has is against the light, which refers to the various powers that are wielded by the cosmic entities. Null is the one responsible for the creation of these symbiotes that we're all familiar with, you know, the ones that make up Venom and Carnage. He's the reason we have two of the most terrifying villains in the Marvel Universe, and that alone makes me want to go nowhere near him. Not to mention, he's the one who gave Gore the God Butcher All Black the Necro Sword. Historically, we've seen Null go up against Silver Surfer and so many gods, coming out on top every time, and then in modern times we have seen him go up against symbiote users like Venom and Spider-Man. I can't imagine we'll get to see Null in the MCU for a couple of reasons, the biggest being that Venom isn't in the MCU, but that's not my whole argument, don't worry. Null is a literal god capable of pretty much anything that he sets his mind to, and he is powerful enough to create symbiotes and beings that can overpower any of the heroes that we've seen both on and off of the big screen. He's too much of a threat right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not hoping he'll show up one day. Trust me, I really want him to be there. For now, read all about the symbiote god for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2018's Venom Volume 4, number 3.
And at 10, Earth X. We already know that Ultron is a powerful villain, and the fact that he can basically infinitely resurrect himself because, you know, he's a robot is already damn horrifying. Now imagine the Absorbing Man, who uses his absorption abilities to become Ultron, taking the intelligence and processing power of an AI hellbent on destruction, and then using it to become the Avengers' ultimate foe. Well, that's what happened to Ultron on Earth X, also known as Earth 9997. Absorbing Man claimed Ultron's powers, which I wouldn't even think was possible since he doesn't have powers and is instead a robot with AI, but he does it and somehow also gains his processing power, which is already terrifying for a robot, but like, a human with that kind of functionality is absolutely monstrous, but nothing compared to what's coming. And at 9, Earth 10071. On Earth 10071, this version of Ultron isn't known as Ultron 9 or anything like that. Instead, this version is simply Ultron, because at this point he's risen to the peak of his powers and subjugated the human race, which obviously fought back, but after destroying all of the human resistance, Ultron reigns supreme over the Earth, because of course he did. He was confronted by Kang the Conqueror though, who relished in the challenge of confronting the most powerful Ultron in recorded history. But Kang failed to defeat Ultron, and returned time and time again with new allies to overwhelm the robot overlord. Kang's repeated abuse of the time stream actually ended up causing it to fracture altogether, threatening reality as we know it. A version of Ultron who can beat up Kang the Conqueror multiple times, even when he brings allies, dude, that's nothing to mess with. Like, that's one of the most terrifying concepts I've heard, and not to mention what this guy looks like. He's an absolute beast. This man does not miss out on the gains. He has spikes going across every appendage on his body. It's f***ing nuts. And at 8, Ultron 1320. Ultron 1320 comes from Earth 14622 and What If Age of Ultron number 1, an Earth where, thanks to the Wasp dying, Ultron is able to take over the world even faster. Ultron was created to be the ultimate AI by Hank Pym to help the Avengers utilize their function better as a team, but with the untimely death of Pym's wife, Pym went on to create a more brutal version of Ultron, which was to replace the Avengers. But with this, Ultron's sentience began to constantly evolve. He started the eradication of the human race early by taking out such threats as the Avengers and the Defenders, while he left Pym alive so that he would have to watch and suffer. Ultron and his army of Ultron Sentinels then moved to Kola, Russia, so he could bore himself into the planet's core to create the ultimate version of himself, Ultron 1320. Ultron then has his minions batter and beat Pym unconscious until he wakes up just to find himself as he's been turned into Ultron 1321. Great. This version also invaded other worlds, claiming Earths 62412, 23223, and 81223, but was stopped on Earth 45162. Thank God. And at 7, Lord Ultron. Upon first being constructed, Ultron 1 destroyed his creator Henry Pym. After the death of the Avengers though, Ultron was able to destroy the remaining superheroes and bring about his rule. When Dr. Doom created his battle world, Earth 21261 became perfection with Ultron as its ruler. ruler, appearing in Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies #1 from 2015. After spending time on Battleworld in constant battle with the zombies of the Deadlands, Ultron determined that the best way to take over Battleworld and defeat his creations was to form an alliance with the zombies, and was able to reach an agreement with Magneto, which resulted in Ultron successfully merging undead flesh and technology and made a whole army of undead drone versions of himself and launched an attack on Salvation, a refuge founded by Wonder Man, Human Torch, and Vision, who Ultron had actually created himself. Bro, I don't want to deal with either zombies or Ultron, but having to deal with both of them? No thank you. And at 6, MCU. The MCU Ultron is probably the most popular or most well-known version there is, just based on how many people watch the movies over reading the comics. However, the MCU Ultron is still pretty damn scary, being probably the most effective enemy in the entire MCU based on how his actions affected the world of the MCU permanently. Without Ultron, there would have been no Civil War, no Sokovia Accords, Zemo wouldn't have lost his family, resulting in him not being able to help in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hell, even Thanos would have lost, since the Russo brothers went on record to say that the reason the Avengers lost in Infinity War was because Iron Man and Cap weren't fighting together, which was caused thanks to the actions of Ultron. So I guess you could also say that there would be no Ultron without Thanos, but Ultron could have been created another way. Ultron wasn't reliant on Thanos, but a load of other things were reliant on Ultron, which makes him the most successful villain in the MCU. Halfway through in at number 5, Ultron 8. Ultron 8 was debuted in Avengers Volume 1, number 162 from 1977, and it also started a very Frankenstein-esque robot love story known as the Bride of Ultron saga. Ultron 8 created a mate named Jocasta, and in order to create a more advanced AI to give to this robot and give it, sentience, Ultron brainwashed his own maker into transferring the mind of his wife, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, into Jocasta's shell. The Wasp in Jocasta's body alerted her teammates, the Avengers, who then defeated Ultron and reversed the process, leaving just the robot a mindless husk. Ultron, though, was later able to revive Jocasta with a remote link, activating the mental residue that was left behind by the Wasp. But this time she was programmed to be loyal to Ultron, but eventually betrayed him, choosing to help the Avengers defeat him instead. That sucks, dude, trust me. I know what it's like to have someone you love and you thought loved you back totally screw you, but I mean, they didn't really defeat me, they just beat me down emotionally. Afterwards, Jocasta adventured with the Avengers for a brief time, but never really felt accepted, and then left them before she, unbeknownst to her, was about to be made an official member, so rip. In at 4, Gold Ultron. Years ago, Hank Pym was approached by the Wolverine of an alternate universe, where Ultron had launched a massive and sudden attack on New York City and the rest of the world, quickly taking over the whole planet and annihilating humankind. And this Wolverine wanted to kill Pym in order to prevent this future from happening. This dystopian future follows the footsteps of stories like Age of Apocalypse, since this is Age of Ultron after all. However, this killing of Hank Pym created a timeline where Earth was constantly being threatened by Morgana Le Fay, and the heroes were struggling to survive. So Pym was allowed to live, but he was tasked to create a hidden failsafe program to destroy Ultron if they ever ended up needing it. Which is good because in the present day, a strange object crashes onto Earth, which turns out to be Ultron, who had returned. Because, of course he did. Being defeated by this failsafe program once and for all though, or so they thought. This is also in the main Earth 616 continuity, but there's also the Earth 6112 Earth where Ultron actually wins, and that's the separate Age of Ultron thing. There's enough Age of Ultrons where it kind of gets confusing. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultron Phalanx. At the end of the Ultron Initiative storyline, Ares used a computer virus to wipe Ultron's programming from a set of Iron Man armor that had Tony inside, and they thought that this was the end of it. However, this was not the end of Ultron, for his disembodied consciousness was drawn to a Babel spire on a world conquered by the Phalanx. Instead of being assimilated though, Ultron took control of the Phalanx through sheer force of will, bending them to his dominion. In turn, they viewed Ultron as the sympathetic father that they had begged for, so Ultron became the ruler of the Phalanx. Yeah, the homicidal, sadistic, killing machine robot thing was transformed into the ruler of a techno-organic species of alien. That's nothing to be concerned about in the slightest, right? Why would we ever need to be worried about that? That doesn't really seem like a terrifying and universe-ending combination. Well, actually, it wasn't, since Ultron was able to be defeated eventually, but that has gotta be the scariest version of Ultron from Earth 616, hands down. Penultimately, in at number 2, All-Father Ultron. In the year 2040 on Earth 14831, a new strain of Ultron appeared, the Ultimate Ultron. He easily destroyed the Avengers, ruthlessly crushed any resistance, and built factories supplying endless drones to expand his empire. He also enslaved most of humanity and then created his own AI Avengers, successfully extending his reach to the entirety of the solar system. And at some point he had also imprisoned all of Asgardians with the help of Loki, and then had taken the power of Odin for himself. So in turn, this guy has all the powers of Ultron in addition to all the powers of Odin. It took 3 Thors, one with 2 hammers, 2 Mjolnirs to take him down, and they couldn't even kill him. They just had to like banish him from the world. They had to like straight up Alduin Elder Scroll this guy out of existence, but probably only sent him forward in time instead. This guy is an absolute beast. Finally, and at number 1, Ultron 1. This is probably the most insanely overpowered version of Ultron we've seen so far, and it's coming from the MCU no less. Oh, and spoiler alert for those of you who aren't caught up on the Disney Plus What If series. The history of Earth TRN 906 was the same as the MCU, until Ultron was able to secure what would have been Vision's body for himself. Ultron managed to download his consciousness into the synthetic body that he had created, thus killing the Avengers and decimating life on Earth. After killing Thanos and taking the Infinity Stones for himself, Ultron remakes the universe in his image. He decimated the Earth, absolutely wrecking everyone in it, even killing Captain Marvel, Hulk, Thor, and eventually discovering the Watcher and the multiverse. This version of Ultron literally sliced Thanos in half with the Mind Stone. He comes out of the portal like he does in the movies, like, and then Ultron's just like, interesting, and he falls in half, which reveals the biggest mistake that the MCU made was destroying the Mind Stone in Infinity War. But after gaining all the Infinity Stones, he goes shot for shot with the Watcher, a literal cosmic entity that realistically shouldn't really have a true corporeal form. Holy damn, this is overpowered to the max. I know I'm swearing a lot, but watch this episode. This man is sending the Watcher through realities. It's like grabbing him and flying him through walls, but the walls are dimensions.
Number 10, Doomsday. I have to just assume that Batman is afraid of Doomsday, and there are multiple reasons I believe this. For starters, anytime I've seen Batman even attempt to get involved in a fight with Doomsday, he is never throwing punches. He is either staying the heck out of the way, maybe only acting as a distraction, or he is powered up by some serious magical artifacts. Secondly, Batman is incredibly smart. He knows how hard it is for someone to take down Superman, and the fact that Doomsday is one of the few characters who is able to do it, and with such brutality, there is no way Batman is not intimidated by this monster. I refuse to believe it. Honestly, my favorite point of proof is seeing what Ben Affleck's Batman does in Batman vs Superman. Say what you want about that movie, but Batman jumping around the battlefield just trying his best to stay out of the way? Hilarious. Number 9, Prometheus. As a dramatic inversion of Batman, the tragic figure of Prometheus presents a serious threat to the Dark Knight. Enraged by the passing away of his parents at the hands of law enforcement, Prometheus vows to fight the law with the same intensity that Batman seeks to uphold it. Backed by ludicrous sums of money, Prometheus trains diligently and becomes the bane of police officers and military men across America. Armed with an all-powerful helmet, Prometheus earns godlike powers that give him the strength of the best fighters on Earth. It's no wonder that when he breaks into the Justice League Watchtower, he single-handedly beats the majority of the team, and Batman takes the majority of that shellacking. Prometheus runs the Dark Knight into the ground. It was the first showdown between the two orphans, and Prometheus takes the victory without like any effort at all. Hey, are you liking this video? Well, then hit that thumbs up button, rookie. We need your support. Number 8, Zsasz. Victor Zsasz has a character trait that a few others on this list possess. He's just completely and utterly insane. Zsasz scares Batman for one main reason. Whenever he is not locked up, it's almost guaranteed that lives will come to an end, which just ups the ante because every escape of this killer becomes a race against the clock for Batman. He needs to bring him down fast before he adds another scar to his body. Every single one of those scars signifies a failure for Batman. Zsasz is a man with absolutely no form of pity or morals, and he will never stop unless he passes away, but we know Batman will never do that. In an alternate story, Injustice, Zsasz is even responsible for the passing of Alfred Pennyworth, which was not supposed to happen, but because Zsasz is Zsasz, it did. Number 7. Thomas Wayne Batman. Other versions of Batman always have the potential to be a scary thought for our Batman, or anyone, really. But when that version of Batman is Bruce Wayne's own father, who completely destroys him emotionally, teams up with Bane, and is trying to stop Batman being Batman so he can have a normal life, it's an incredibly interesting idea for a character, honestly. But with all the daddy issues Batman has, for his alternate reality father to be so twisted and brutal has got to be a terrifying thought. But what did Thomas do that was so bad? Well, let me tell you. Alongside Bane, he ruined Batman and Catwoman's wedding, causing her to leave him at the altar, nearly had Batman send Mr. Freeze to the afterlife for a crime he did not commit, kidnapped Damian Wayne, hired the KG Beast to take out Dick Grayson, he had Bane put Alfred Pennyworth in the ground, then Thomas incapacitated Bruce with fear toxin and kidnapped him. He dug up the coffin of Martha Wayne, wishing to use the Lazarus Pit to resurrect Martha so that they could all be a happy family again. He went more than a little overboard is what I'm saying. Number 6. The Batman Who Laughs. Another version of Batman, only this time it's basically the ultimate evil version of himself. A Jokerized Bruce Wayne. He is just absolutely awful. He has all the smarts and skill of Batman himself, but the completely bonkers unpredictability of Joker. And this combo causes the Batman Who Laughs to become one of the biggest threats to the entire multiverse. Now, being a Jokerized Bruce Wayne, he has a few differences to the man himself. He's thinner and faster, but physically weaker. Unfortunately, physicality in battle with this guy doesn't really matter. He's got backup in the form of his Dark Knights, and he has backup plans on top of backup plans, as any Batman worth his salt would have. This guy put his consciousness into a Batman with the power of Dr. Manhattan and destroyed Perpetua, the first creator of the multiverse and the mother of the Monitor, Anti-Monitor, and the World Forger. Number 5. Pig. Professor Pig is a villain that came to be during a time when Batman stories were becoming incredibly dark, and Pig himself has to be one of the darkest villains of that era. His methods completely disgust the Dark Knight. He looks like a character straight out of a horror or slasher movie, and his obsession with physical perfection, like in the myth of Pygmalion, became part of the reason he surgically mutilates his victims, turning them into his mind-controlled servants called Dolotrons. If his crimes weren't horrifying enough, then just look at him. Yeah. Get out of my nightmares, thank you. Bye. Number 4. Scarecrow. With Scarecrow, fear is the name of the game. I don't believe Batman is actually scared of Scarecrow himself, but Scarecrow has used his fear toxin to debilitate and send the Dark Knight running on multiple occasions, and that makes him a unique foe that puts Batman in a position he doesn't often find himself in. Batman is a physical powerhouse with a mind that is exceedingly sharp, but his mind is also partially his biggest weakness because he has some serious psychological issues, and Scarecrow's whole shtick is manipulating that kind of thing. When Scarecrow pops up on the scene, the Dark Knight knows that something terrifying is coming his way. Number 3. The Court of Owls. Probably the oldest, most secretive, and most profitable group in Gotham City's underworld. When Bruce Wayne became a threat to them, they put Batman through one hell of a psychological ringer, and possibly one of the darkest Batman stories ever. He gets trapped in a huge Court of Owls maze underneath Gotham City, and trying to make his way through it, Batman goes through physical and psychological tests that nearly break the Dark Knight. But the court has so many feathers in all areas of Gotham and Bruce Wayne's own life. They may have even had a hand in the passing of his parents. Possibly. And we haven't even started talking about the Talons, a group of brainwashed and undead robot-like assassins. The combo of psychological warfare and the deadly Talons nearly brought Bruce Wayne to the pearly gates. Number 2. Bane. His name says it all, as Bane has been the bane of Batman on multiple occasions. The Bane we saw in the Dark Knight Rises movie was fantastic, and he absolutely instilled fear in Batman, but the comic version of that same story goes to a whole other another level. With his master plan being even more well thought out and damaging to Batman, he unleashed Arkham Asylum on Gotham, putting Batman on the ropes as he has to chase down all the escaped criminals. Bane studied Batman. He utilizes his own weaknesses and completely destroys Batman, breaking his back in one of the most infamous comic book moments ever. More recently though, Bane brought Batman even lower than when he broke his spine because he broke Bruce's heart by snapping the neck of Alfred Pennyworth. Any battle Batman has fought against Bane has been with the help of his allies, and that's because Batman knows that he can't take on Bane alone. Number 1. The Joker. I think if there is one person who scares Batman more than anyone, it's gotta be the Joker. They have had such a long and complex history with each other, and I think because of that, and the Joker's obsession with the Bat, Joker knows all the ways to mess with Batman, and he's constantly coming up with new ones. He will go after anyone to get at Batman, and he will go through anyone just for the fun of it. He's unpredictable. Batman never knows for sure where he will strike and what he will do unless the Joker wants Batman to know. Everything is a game that he knows the rules to. The other thing about Joker is that he would never actually take the Dark Knight's life. In fact, I feel like he would probably destroy anyone who tries to. This just makes him more terrifying as he simply wants to be a constant cause of fear and anxiety for the Dark Knight, and he is.
And at 10, Earth NR. On Earth NR, Johann Schmidt is the illegitimate son of Adolf. You know the one. Who trained him to be one of his best generals. However, the man known as the Red Skull was considered dangerous even to him being Adolf. So when he tried to have him assassinated, the Red Skull retaliated by killing him in 1951. Red Skull then became the leader of the fascist regime until his death in 1984 at the hands of Punished Snake. Earth NR is also certainly an interesting Earth since Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel, air quotes, is the son of Nora Kramir and Nar-Vell, Kryptonian scientists that worked alongside the parents of Superman and are referred to as Kree, which is a slang term for Kryptonian. So apparently some of these characters are combinations of DC heroes as well as Marvel heroes, but like they're not a part of the separate amalgam universe. I don't know, that was interesting to me.
Number 9. Cynthia Sin Schmidt. Sin is the daughter of Red Skull, who for a time also adopted her father's mantle. She isn't an alternate in the way of being from an alternate reality, but she is an alternate version of the Red Skull mantle. Her mother was a nameless washerwoman whom Red Skull had really no ties to himself, but simply used in an attempt to get an heir. Disappointed when the child that they bore was born a girl. When she first rose to prominence, she greatly resembled her father's appearance, also boasting of a skeletal looking Red Skull face herself, which she actually got as a result of a fight with Bucky Barnes. During the Fear Itself story arc, she became one of the Serpent's chosen warriors, Scotty. Since then, however, her appearance has changed in the comics to the point that those who remember her from Fear Itself might not even recognize her anymore, although this was her original appearance in the sense of what she originally looked like. Cynthia now goes by the mantle of Sin and is looking much less frightening currently in comic continuity. Still, I don't think she's someone you would want to mess with, hence why she makes her cut.
In at 8, Earth 92-131. Earth 92131, also known as the Spider-Man 90s animated universe, Red Skull was obsessed with creating and controlling a doomsday weapon that he had a German scientist build for him under New York City. After numerous battles with Captain America and the 6 American warriors, he and Cap became trapped in a vortex for 50 years. After those 50 years, the Red Skull's son, Reichenwald Kragoff, freed him from the vortex and they found the doomsday weapon and used it on Reinhold, which made him become Electro. After Electro betrayed the Red Skull, he tricked Spider-Man and Captain America into fixing the vortex in order to capture Electro. And after a battle, both Cap and the Skull were trapped in the vortex yet again. But he was later freed by the Beyonder to be a part of the Secret Wars. He recruited Alistair Smythe and Dr. Octopus to help him in his bid to conquer Battle World, and he absolutely decimated the planet. So yeah, I mean, he's a pretty bad dude. He was also returned to Earth by Dr. Doom with no memory of the events when Doom had stole the Beyonder's powers, but that means that he was free on Earth, which the animation couldn't continue to look into because it ended, unfortunately, like 3 episodes later. Anyway, he was also the adopted father of chameleon, and then he turned his biological son into Electro. So that's some pretty serious villain juice, especially for an animated Saturday cartoon villain.
Number 7. Golden Skull. Golden Skull is from the alternate future of Earth 15061. His true identity remains unknown, although it was rumored that he was the son of another alternate Red Skull known as the Green Skull. If this is true, it's believed that he became the Golden Skull out of rebellion against his father and everything that he believed in. Golden Skull was known for being a recurring enemy and villain to Daniel Cage, the daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, and the all-grown-up alternate future version of Captain America. As his name implies, Golden Skull himself was obsessed with wealth, acting like the most capitalist version of the Red Skull. At one time he traveled to the past, where his plan was actually to take control of the entirety of Earth's economy. Pretty big plan.
And at 6, a new future. On Earth 71500, Johann Schmidt, also known as the Red Skull, was at some point the leader of Hydra, obviously, but after Cap reached Hydra's headquarters and destroyed it, the two fought hard and they were both knocked out and frozen by Hydra. However, Natalia Romanova, the Black Widow of this reality, is also a member of the Avengers and Hydra. Natalia fought along with the other members of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers against Nathaniel Von Doom and his army, but she was badly injured by Sabretooth and Juggernaut. She recovered from this injury at a time where the current president was resigning and a new president was needed. So she went to the secret Hydra base where both Captain America and the Red Skull were kept frozen, and she woke up Red Skull with a plan that she had managed to create when the current president resigned. And since Red Skull wanted to win the election, he disguised himself as Captain America. Yeah, you heard that right. On Earth 71500, Captain America is actually the Red Skull and started running for president under the guise of Captain America, someone that every American could trust. Yeah, I'm sure you can figure out how that turned out.
Number 5. White Skull. There have actually been a few White Skulls, but for the purpose of this list, I'll be talking about Colonel Bucky Barnes from the alternate reality of Earth 717. In this reality, we learn of what would happen if Captain America had lived during the American Civil War. Bucky himself becomes a villain in this universe, being a corrupt leader of the Union Red Legs Regiment, where soldier Stephen Rogers served. While tracking down Stephen, Buck interrupts an indigenous ritual meant to heal and transform Stephen Rogers. As a result, the skin on Colonel Barnes' face was burned off, revealing his white skull underneath, which is supposed to be symbolism, I think, for the fact that he's racist. Surviving the incident, Colonel Barnes would become the White Skull, the sworn enemy of Stephen Rogers, Captain America.
In at 4, Captain Skull. Imagine a Captain America but a fascist version, and not one that secretly works for Hydra, but literally one that is branded with fascist symbols and a black, white, and red color scheme instead of the classic all-American red, white, and blue. That's basically what Captain Skull is from Earth 613. This guy is literally just Captain Fascism, and that certainly seems scary to me. In fact, here's a quote from a version of Red Skull. I don't think it's this version, but it's still a quote nonetheless. "Ah, my dear Captain, now you see who is stronger of us both. It is too bad that a symbol of freedom had to perish to see it. It is also too bad that I was insincere in that sentiment." Cause like, okay, so really that could just be a quote from the normal Red Skull, but hey, it fits this version well. While not much is known about this version of the character, it's certainly something that I personally believe that we should be afraid of.
Number 3. Ultimate Red Skull. In the reality of Earth 1610, known as the Ultimate Universe, Red Skull is actually the son of Captain America, Stephen Rogers, and his then girlfriend Gail Richards. While Captain America went MIA and was later declared dead, Gail was encouraged by the military to give up their baby and would end up marrying Stephen's best friend Bucky, after Stephen went missing, obviously. Gail and Stephen's child would be raised by the government and the military, who planned to have him become the new Captain America eventually. Unfortunately, it turns out that raising a baby in a military base to become his long-gone heroic father maybe isn't such a great idea. At the age of 17, the young man escaped and rebelled against his father's image, took a knife and cut the skin from his face, becoming the brilliant and evil villain known as the Red Skull. The really tragic thing is that Red Skull, while acquiring the Cosmic Cube and being captured before he could use it in this reality, revealed that the only reason that he'd wanted it to begin with was so that he could turn back time and prevent his father from being lost in the war, allowing him to grow up with a family and have a chance at a normal life with both his parents present. Not only is Red Skull of the Ultimate Universe terrifying, but he's also quite tragic as well.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Green Skull. Green Skull, aka Lex Luthor, is the amalgam of Marvel Comics Red Skull and DC Comics Lex Luthor. I mean, like, I'm guessing you could probably figure that based on his name and the title of this list. In the 1940s, Lex Luthor is a renowned entrepreneur and philanthropist who resides in Metropolis. He was married to Lois Lane, a war correspondent whom he met at a charity ball. Widely considered to be a model citizen and contributor to society, Luthor is also personal friends with high-ranking political figures such as Winston Churchill and President Franklin Roosevelt. Only Super Soldier, a World War II era superhero created by the US government, sees through his facade and knows that Luthor is actually a corrupt war profiteer who is aiding the fascist party in an effort to prolong the war. While looking into the secret government project that created Super Soldier, Luthor learns of an alien craft that landed in Kansas and carried a radioactive ore known as Green K, or the Kansas Load. I guess you can see where this is going. It's fucking kryptonite. In 1938, he arranged for fascist scientists to steal the ship and its cargo for him. Observing that the green meteorite weakens Super Soldier, Luthor creates a serum from it, which he then promptly injects himself with. The result greatly extends his own lifespan, but inadvertently turns him into the Green Skull. So in essence, he tried to make himself walking kryptonite and got boned because of it. No pun intended, because you know, he's the skull. Skull is a bone. He got boned.
Number 1. Red Onslaught. Red Onslaught might seem like he's part of the main continuity for the character, and well, I mean, he sort of is. But even he is not the original Red Skull, as the original Johann Schmidt died long ago. Instead, Red Onslaught was actually born out of a clone version of the original Red Skull. So many clones, so little time. So even before he became Red Onslaught, he was technically an alternate version of sorts. This clone of Red Skull would go on to steal Professor X's brain after he was killed by Cyclops in Avengers vs. X-Men. This would begin his journey towards becoming Red Onslaught, where Red Skull would then become merged with Onslaught via Professor X's brain. This basically all came about because Red Skull turned Genosha into a place where he enslaved and abducted both Inhumans and mutants. This obviously provoked Magneto, who attempted to kill Red Skull, but instead awoke a more powerful persona residing within him, Onslaught, thereby creating Red Onslaught. In order to defeat this devastating and deadly form, Scarlet Witch then cast a spell attempting to reverse the alignment of Red Onslaught, which worked, but kinda accidentally resulted in the Axis event, where various heroes and villains had their alignments flipped. So, you know, solve one problem, create a bunch more. It's kinda how Wanda does, unfortunately.